a fin de no interrumpir la
so you will not
transmisión.
be interrupted on the
La
transmission.
Comisión Permanente
Our
de Acceso a la
Commission for the
Justicia de
Permanent
Personas
Access
en
for
Condición de
Justice and
Vulnerabilidad y
Purposes for
Justicia en
Migration and
Comunidad
Vulnerability
del
in your
Poder
community,
Judicial del
from the
Perú,
judicial power
el
from
capítulo de
Peru,
las
the
Américas de la
chapters from the
Asociación
Americas, from
Internacional
the
de Jueces
Association
en Refugio y
International of
Migración,
Judges
el
for
Alto
Refugee and
Comisionado de las
Migration, or the
Naciones
High
Unidas para los
Commissioners from the
Refugiados y
UN
el
for the
Instituto de
Refugee and the
Democracia de la
Institute of
Pontificia
Democracy
Universidad
of the
Católica del Perú
Apostolic
les dan la más cordial
Catholic from
bienvenida a
Catholic
esta
from Peru
conferencia virtual,
welcomes
el
you to the
acceso
virtual
a la
conferences,
justicia
the
y
access
derechos de
to
las personas
justice and
refugiadas
rights
y
from
migrantes.
migrantes and migrant
Saludamos
people.
la presencia de las
We
altas
welcome you, the
autoridades que se han
presence
dado
of the
cita
high
en esta sala de
authorities that
honor,
have joined here
señora
together
doctora Yaneta
on this
Yaguilar,
honor
jueza
class.
suprema y presidenta de la Comisión Permanente de Acceso a la Justicia del Poder
Ms. Janet
Judicial de la
Tello
República del
Gigardi,
Perú,
which is the President from
doctor
the Justice
Ramiro
and the
Bustamante
Republic of
Segarra,
Peru,
juez supremo
Dr.
de la
Ramiro
Corte Suprema de
Bustamante,
Justicia del
Supreme
Perú,
Judge from the
doctor
Supreme Judge
Esteban
Court
Lemos
of Peru,
Laporte,
Dr.
presidente del
Esteban Lemu
capítulo de las
Laporte,
Américas
President
de
of
la
the Chapter
Asociación
of the America
Internacional de
of the
Jueces en Refugio y
Association of the
Migración,
Judge in
señor
Refugee and
Federico
Migration,
Augusti, doctor
Mr.
representante del
Federico
Alto
Augusti,
Comisionado de las
Dr.
Naciones
Mr.
Unidas
Representative
para
for the
los
High Commission
Refugiados
of the
y la
UN
doctora
for the
Elizabeth Salmón
Refugee, and Dr.
Gárate,
Elizabeth
directora
Salmon
ejecutiva del
Garate,
Instituto de Democracia de la Pontificia Universidad
Executive
Católica del
Director
Perú.
from the Institute
Asimismo,
of
saludamos la presencia de
Pontifici
las señoras y
Peru
señores
Catholic
participantes
Association.
que nos acompañan
Also,
a través de las
all the
salas de
participants
Google y
from
de la
the
transmisión
participants that
vía
are joining
redes
us together,
sociales.
and also from the web
Para dar
pages
inicio
and
a este
social
importante
media.
evento, damos el uso de la
And
palabra al
start, we'll
doctor
give
Esteban
the
Lemos
word to
Laporte,
Mr. Esteban
juez
Lemu
del
Laporte,
Tribunal
judge
Administrativo
from
de
the
Costa Rica,
Tribunal
presidente del
Administrative of
capítulo de
Costa
las
Rica, the
Américas de la
president from the
Asociación
chapter of the Americas,
Internacional
and
de
from the
Jueces en Refugio
International
y
Judges
Migración. El
Association
doctor
of
Esteban
Judge
Lemos
and
es abogado y
Migrant
doctor por
people.
la Universidad de
Mr.
La Salle en
Lemus,
Costa Rica.
doctor from La
Desde el
Salle in Costa
2011 se
Rica
desempeña
since
como juez del Tribunal
2011,
Administrativo
is judge
Migratorio de
from
Costa
the
Rica. Es
Administrative
miembro internacional
Tribunal
de la
of
Asociación
Costa Rica.
Internacional
He
de
is a
Jueces
member
en
of the
Materia de Refugio,
International Judge
donde funge
on
como
Refugee
presidente
Matter
para el capítulo de
where
las
he
Américas
works
y
as
miembro de su
president
Junta
from the
Directiva
chapter of the
Internacional.
Americans. And
Profesionalmente se ha
for
desempeñado en
his
la
joint,
Defensoría de los Habitantes de la
personally,
República
he
y la
has
Comisión Costarricense de
worked
Derecho
on
Internacional
behalf of the
Comunitario,
rights of the people of
del
Costa
cual
Rica.
es miembro
From
fundador.
where
Es
he is
docente
the
universitario
founders
desde el
member.
2005 en materia de Derecho
He's
Internacional y cuenta con
professor
una
in
amplia formación.
international
Fue el
lawyers
Comité Internacional de la Cruz
on
Roja, el Alto
university.
Comisionado
He
de las
also
Naciones
is
Unidas para
president
los
on the
Refugiados y el
Red
Instituto
Cross of Costa Rica,
Internacional
and
de
also
Derechos
in the
Humanos de
international
Sanremo. Doctor
rights from
Esteban
San
Lemos,
Remo.
bienvenido.
Mr. Dr. Esteban Lemos, welcome.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very
Un
much.
saludo cordial desde San José,
It is
Costa
a
Rica,
pleasure to welcome
a
you
las
from San Jose,
personas
Costa
que
Rica,
se encuentran
to all the
en
people
esta
that
sala
honor me
principal,
to be here in
a
this
las honorables
main room,
autoridades del
to the
Poder
honorable
Judicial del
authorities
Perú,
from the judicial power from
a
Peru,
las autoridades del Alto
also to the
Comisionado de
authorities
Naciones
from the High
Unidas
Commission
para los
from the
Refugiados
UN for the refugees,
y para las autoridades de
and
la
also for the
Pontificia
authorities
Universidad
for the
Católica del Perú,
University of Catholic University of
para la
Peru,
Asociación Internacional de
for the International
Jueces de
Association of
Migración
Judge of
y Refugio.
Migration and Refugee.
Es un verdadero
It is a great
privilegio
privilege
poder hoy unirnos a esta
to be
conferencia
able to gather you here on this
dictada por las
conference
autoridades
and to
peruanas.
be dictated by the
La
Peruvian
Asociación
authorities.
Internacional de Jueces en
The
Migración y
International
Refugio es una
Association of
institución
Judges for
con más de 25 años
Migrants,
de
it's an
experiencia
association
fundada en
of more
Varsovia
than 25 years of
que
experience founded in
reúne a
Varsovia,
los
which
juristas a lo
gathers
largo
the
de los 5
juridical
continentes
people along the five
que se
continents
reúnen
that gather,
que generan espacios de
that
reflexión
generate spaces for
para analizar
thinking and reflecting, of
por la vía de la
analyzing
jurisprudencia de los
on
tribunales
what it is
judiciales y
the
administrativos
judicial way and the court way,
mediante el análisis de las comisiones
on the analyses, on the
administrativas
administrative
existen en el mundo
commissions
para
that
la
are in the
procesión
world
de
for what it
la
is
protección
concealed,
internacional por la vía del refugio,
protecting
así
on
como
the way of eliminate
tanto
the
del
judges
continente
from
americano
other
como del
world
mundo
parts and
sobre
from the
la
continent
experiencia
about
del
the
Perú y
experience of
sobre
the
la
Peru
experiencia del sur
and
de
the
las Américas.
experience on the south of the Americas.
En un momento en nuestro
A
mundo donde
moment
las
in our world
circunstancias
where the
hacen
situations
que el
make
tema de la
that the
migración y el
subject about
refugio
migration
sea
and
del foco de
refugee
atención para todos.
is about a particular
En
attention to
nombre
everybody.
de nuestro
In the name
presidente
of in our
y en
president,
nombre del resto de los miembros
the rest of the
del capítulo de las
members and
Américas,
of the committee
agradecemos
of
la
the chapter of
disposición
the Americas
de la
will
doctora
really
Tello
want to
para
welcome
propiciar
and
estos
thank
espacios,
uh,
también a la ACNUR y a las autoridades
doctors
universitarias, así
space and
como a
the
la
ACNUR that
Pontificia
make
del
the
Perú,
space for
que
this to
tan
happen, and also
amablemente,
for the
por
judicial
medio de
powers
los
of the Peru,
colaboradores que
which
han
is
servido en
welcome and are welcome
la
us
asistencia para que esta
and
reunión
the
sea un
assistance
éxito.
of the meeting
Nuestro agradecimiento
with the
sincero.
whole objective to be
Estamos
a
muy
complete
contentos de que
success. We
el
are
sur
very
de las
happy
Américas, que la
that
voz
the
del
south
sur
of
de
the
las
Americas,
Américas
that the voice of the south
vuelva
of the
a resonar
America,
en nuestra
it can be heard
en
us
nuestra
again
asociación.
in our
Y qué más
association. And
privilegio
what
que
else
sea de la
privilege
mano
that
de nuestro
it is
miembro,
by
el
the
doctor
hand
Tello.
of our member,
Así que
Dr.
muchísimas
Tello.
gracias.
So thank you
Muy
so
buenas
much.
tardes a todas y a todos, y un saludo
Good
también a las
afternoon to
personas
everybody,
que nos
and
escuchan y que nos
very
ven fuera
welcome
del
gather
continente
from the
americano.
people that is
Miembros de la asociación,
watching
les
us from
agradecemos por su
outside
recambio horario, estar
that
con
we are
nosotros,
really
les desea
welcome them
mucho
and
éxito
thank you
en sus
them to be
países.
on the change of
Muchísimas gracias.
schedule, regardless if it's night or day in their countries. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos las palabras
We
del
thank you
doctor
so much. The
Esteban
words of
Lemus
Dr.
Laporte,
Esteban Lemus
juez del
Laporte,
Tribunal
judge
Administrativo de
from
Costa
the
Rica,
administrative
presidente
tribunal
del
from Costa Rica,
capítulo de
president
las
of the
Américas de la
chapter of the
Asociación
Americas, from the
Internacional de Jueces
Association,
en
International
Refugio y
Association of
Migración.
Judges of Migration People.
A continuación, presentamos la ponencia.
Next, we are going to present
Protección y
our
garantía de los
exponents,
derechos de las
protection
personas
and
migrantes y
warranties
refugiados
of people,
en el
of
sistema
migrant people and
jurídico
refugees
internacional,
in the
a cargo de la
jurisdictional
doctora Janet Tello Gilardi,
moment
jueza
international.
suprema de la Corte Suprema de Justicia de la República del
Charge
Perú,
of Dr. Janet
presidenta de la
Tello
Comisión
Ilardi,
Permanente de Acceso a la Justicia
Supreme
de
Judge Court
Personas en
President of
Condición
the
de
Permanent Commission
Vulnerabilidad y
to Access of the
Justicia en su
Commission
comunidad
in
del
Migration
Poder
Commission
Judicial
and
del Perú.
vulnerability
La doctora Janet
in our
Tello es
community from
abogada
the
y
judicial
magíster en
power of Peru.
Derecho,
Dr.
Convención
Janet
y
Tello is
Política
a lawyer
Constitucional
and
por la
magistrate
Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú,
by the
doctora en Derecho y
Pontifical
Ciencia Política
University
y
of Peru,
egresada de la Maestría en Derecho
doctor
en
in
Ciencias Penales
lawyers
de la Universidad
in
Nacional
Peru,
Mayor de San
and
Marcos,
lawyer science
diplomada
inspiration
en
in
Estudios de
the
Género por
major
la Pontificia
University
Universidad
of San
Católica del
Marcos.
Perú. Desde el 2013 es jueza titular de la Corte Suprema de
13, she is
Justicia
a
del Perú,
judge, Supreme
presidenta
Court
de
of
la
Peru,
primera Sala de Derecho
president
Constitucional
of the
y
first
Social
judge of
transitoria y de la
constitutional
Comisión
rights
Permanente de Acceso
in
a la
Peru,
Justicia
and
de
also on the
Personas en
permanent
Condición
commission
de Vulnerabilidad
of the
del Poder
people of
Judicial del
person
Perú.
that is in
Es
vulnerable
fundadora de la
conditions of migration in
Asociación de
Peru. She is
Jueces
founder
para la
of the
Justicia y la
Associations of
Democracia
Judges
JUSEM
for the
y
Democracy
presidenta de la
and
Asociación
Rights and
Peruana
president
de
of the
Mujeres
Association from
Jueces
Peru
e
from Women's
integra la
Judges.
Asociación Internacional
She
de
belongs
Mujeres
to the
Jueces.
Association of
Es
the International
integrante,
Association
fundadora
of
y miembro del
Judges.
Consejo
She is
Directivo del
founder
Comité
from the
Panamericano de
Committee
Jueces
of
por los
Pan
Derechos
American
Sociales y
Judges
la Doctrina
for the
Franciscana,
Rights of
creada
Human
por su
and the
santidad
Franciscan
el Papa
community
Francisco,
created
e
by your
integrante de la
sanctity, the
directiva
Pope
del
Francisco.
capítulo América
And
de la
she's
Asociación
also an
Internacional de
integrity for
Jueces en
the
Refugio y
International
Migración.
Association for
Ha sido
Migrating,
reconocida
and
por el gobierno de Perú con
she's
la
been
Orden al
recognized by the
Mérito de
government
la
of
Mujer
Peru for the
2018
Order to
y el
Merit to
Premio
Women
Líderes de Derechos
2018
Humanos,
and the
Rostros por la Igualdad,
prize
otorgado
Women
por el
are
gobierno de
Leaders for
Canadá
the
en
Human
el
Rights,
2019.
given by
Doctora
Canada
Tello, bienvenida.
in 2019. Dr. Tello,
Muchas
welcome.
gracias, Cristian. Buenas
Thank you so much,
tardes con
Kristen.
todas y con
Good
todos. Buenas
afternoon to
noches a quienes
everybody,
también
and good
están
night for the
conectándose
ones,
fuera del horario que tenemos aquí en Perú,
the
¿no?
ones that are
Que para
presenting
nosotros
outside
es
the
la
country that we
tarde,
have here in Peru,
las
that
3 de
is
la
in the
tarde.
afternoon here,
Quiero
3 p.m.
saludar en
here.
primer lugar
I
a
want to
doctor
say
Esteban
hello in
Lemus
first place
Laporte,
to Dr. Esteban Lemus
ya se ha
Laporte.
mencionado, él es presidente
It's
del
been
capítulo de
mentioned
las
here, he's the
Américas de la
president of
Asociación
the Charter of the
Internacional
Americas
de Jueces
and
y
the
Juezas en
International
Refugio y Migración,
Associations of Judges,
dándole
Judges
mucho
in
impulso en
Migration,
nuestra región
giving a
a la
lot of impulse in
problemática
our
de la
region
protección de los
on the
derechos humanos
problem and
fundamentales
protection of
de
human
estas
rights,
poblaciones
what it
vulnerables.
is the
Al doctor
fundamental
Ramiro
rights for these
Bustamante
vulnerable
Segarra,
people.
también lo saludo
Dr. Ramiro
especialmente, él es miembro de la
Bustamante,
Corte Suprema de
he's a
Justicia del
member
Perú
of the
y
Supreme
él
Court of
ha
Peru,
sido
and he
galardonado
has
por
been
sentencias precisamente en
prized
esta línea de
with
protección de los
sentences
derechos
on this
humanos
line of
de las personas
protection to
migrantes.
human rights
Y por
protections
eso
with migrant
tenemos el
people.
honor de contar con
And
él.
that is why we have the
Quiero
love
dar el
to have
saludo
him here
también
present.
al doctor
I
Federico
also want
Augusti,
to say hello
que
to Dr.
representante del
Federico
Alto
Augusti,
Comisionado de las Naciones Unidas
and
para los
who represents
Refugiados,
the High
y
Commissioner of
sabemos el
UN for
trabajo
the
que tiene
refugees.
ACNUR,
We know the
y en
work
esta
that
ocasión
ACNUR
los
has,
esfuerzos
and in
conjuntos
this
para poder
occasion,
llevar
it
a
is a
cabo
big effort to be here with us to
evento tan
into
importante
place
en esta
this so
línea de
much
protección y
important
garantía de
event,
estos
which is
derechos,
the
de los
line
derechos
of protection
fundamentales.
of warranties and
A la
protection
doctora
for
Elizabeth
rights,
Salmón
fundamental
Garavito, que es
rights.
directora ejecutiva del Instituto de Democracia y
Elizabeth
Derechos
Samon
Humanos de
Garavete,
la
which
Pontificia
is
Universidad
directive
Católica, también
executive for the
reconocida profesional
Catholic
en
University in
esa
Chile,
línea de trabajo comprometido con
in
los
Peru,
derechos
and in that
humanos y
line of
las
work,
personas,
which is
especialmente de las personas vulnerables.
directed
A la
to the
doctora Elvira
person
Álvarez, quien es
who are vulnerable for
vicepresidenta de la,
migration.
perdón,
Dr. Elvira
presidenta de la
Albace, she's
Comisión de Justicia
president of a Commission of
del
Justice
Poder
of
Judicial
Gender in Peru,
delante
a member of the Commission of Access to Justice, and also with the Doctora Hermosa Castro Maruja, who is there, and the whole team, which is behind these screens, which is on these, behind this screen virtual, who makes possible the opportunity for us to be connected here using this technology with more than 1,000 people. That is a work that you can achieve with compromise and conviction that we always try to contagious people with. That is why, because talking or trying about contagions, it results very difficult to talk about in 40, 30 minutes the whole trail, what means warranties and protecting migrating peoples and refugees. We will try to do our best, and we also try to keep the interest to you, because on one side it's a small time on what it is, what we can bring to you. On the other side, we will try to keep ourselves on a platform that it's not the best way to expose. But those are the methods and the ways that we have to adapt at effect to be making this new reality or this new normality to adapt ourselves. As an introduction, we can point out that as a way of introduction, we can point out, as the International Association does for Migration, is that in the world we're talking about billion of people, or migrants, international migrants. From here, it is approximately 4% of the world population. From that number, approximately like 1 million of people migrate from Venezuela are actually in our country. Now, there's a lot of reasons why millions of people will move from one border to another. Will be on their behalf or not on their own way, to look for better future or to improve their way of living. That picture that you can see there, it's very graphic of what is happening day by day, after hour. While we are here talking, speaking on this platform, at this precise moment, there are people walking or moving on a boat, on inside a truck, or inside a fridge or a cold truck, just because they want not to be detected on the borders. And that is a reality that hits us, in front of which we cannot stand aside. That is why it's so important, these activities, the ones we are taking place today. Next, please. There's factors that from people mobility, it's multiple. We can talk about economical crisis, political economical crisis, climate change because of the pandemic, because of health. That is why we have right now migration as well. Look at the picture on the center that I managed to put there. Because what I said about climate changes, that it's an island made in Male, which is in the Indian Sea. It's a beautiful island in a beautiful ocean with the wonderful ocean, but because of the climate change, scientists are saying that level rises one level, a meter level, it's more probably that island will go away and disappear. Look at the amount of people that will have to migrate. And along with all the reasons that we have to, right now we have to addition what it is climate change. That's another adding factor. One other clear example of migration is the subject about migration of Venezuela people that I referred myself earlier, and that what we are, or I'm hoping that there's a lot of people connected from Venezuela, and that especially that we want to tell them with full clarity that we are here to protect your rights, and we have to keep on that in that convincement to the people that the situation in our country, it's not because of the people of Venezuela. We have a lot of circumstances that allows us or takes us to take those actions on behalf protection, it's on the other side. I wanted to do a little bit parenthesis here to address to the population from Venezuela that approximately from 2016 keeps on coming day by day to our country. Historically, after World War II, in which Peru was a destiny country from international migrating people, after that, Peru has not that condition. However, now, as I repeat, as the crisis from the population of Venezuela, we are having that amount of migrants in a very high amount and respect in which we are calculating that approximately 500,000 has asked for refugees. So that is why we are saying that Peru is facing an important challenge in front of the taking in people that needs protection from the international community. Especially, we are now in the region, the second country with major quantity of Venezuela migrants after, just behind Venezuela, Colombia, and maybe at international level. To continue with this presentation, we have talked about migrating people. We have talked about the situation on the international level, but we have to refer to what are we talking about when we refer to international migration. When we talk about international migration, as you see on this slide, we are talking about the movement of people that leave their country from origin to establish temporal or permanent in another country. It is different from the migrating situation because the migrating situation has to be with the judicial function or station that the people is right now. If that person crosses the border from their country and goes to another one and complies with the migrating dispositions, we are in front that it's in regular condition. But maybe because of multiple reasons will not be able to meet or cannot keep on complying with the migration condition to get inside the country and stay there. That is why from that definition, we go from definition from what it is a person which is a refugee. And a refugee will find the definition in two instruments, in two very important international instruments. One is the Convention about the Refugee Convention and the Protocol on the 67, and another one which is a judicial instrument from the region, which is the Cartagena Declaration of 1984. Who are we going to consider a person that it's a refugee that needs this protection from the international community? The person crosses the border from his country, saying he's going out from his territory because he has a convinced fear about persecution. Be careful, because about this first definition, practically, it develops about the circumstances about one single person. This single person has a fear, a real fear, not just subjective, not just a real fear about persecution because of race, religion, nationality, maybe belongs to a social group, maybe has different political opinions. In his country, he cannot find protection. Or maybe there is for somebody else, but not for him. Imagine a person that has a sexual orientation, homosexual, and I don't know, he escapes and comes to Peru. For more than conservative that we are, because we don't have laws that penalize homosexual relationships, but maybe this person in his country, maybe in Iran, he finds that he will be punished for that. Then there is a real threat or a real fear that somebody will harm him. Maybe somebody else with his same condition were condemned, or maybe you will think that maybe because of the information of UAir, maybe there is 80 countries that penalize the homosexual relationships right now, and among them
Entonces, esta
some
sería
of
una
them with
persona
death penalty. So this will be a person perfectly
de tener una
accessible, or
condición
maybe
jurídica
he
de
will be
refugio.
accessible to have a juridical
Como
condition
ven
of
a
refugee.
continuación,
As you
la
can see on the
declaración de
next
Cartagena amplió esta
declaration
definición,
of
porque
Cartagena,
con el correr
enhance
de la
this
historia de los países y de la situación de
this
las
situation, because
poblaciones,
with the relationships and what was happening on the
tenemos aquí
countries, we have now here
la vida, la
the
seguridad y la
life, the
libertad
security, or the
amenazadas
liberty,
como otra de las causas
another
una
cause
persona o
that a
un colectivo
person
de
or a
personas
collective
puede ser considerado
may
como
be
refugiado.
considered as
¿Por
refugees.
qué? Porque hay
Why?
violencia
Because there are
generalizada,
general
hay
violence,
agresión
there is
extranjera,
aggression
hay
from the
conflictos
foreign people,
internos, la violencia
there is
masiva de
internal
los derechos
conflict,
humanos.
there is violence massive
Inmediatamente
for
podemos
human
pensar en
rights.
una persona
Think
venezolana,
about a
en los
Venezuelan person,
colectivos, en las
maybe a
poblaciones que han salido
collective
de Venezuela
population
por
from
la violación
Venezuela
masiva de sus derechos.
because of the
Conflictos
violation
internos,
massive from their rights,
inmediatamente
or
puede
for
venir a
internal
nuestros
conflicts.
pensamientos
Immediately to
la
our
situación
thoughts,
que
it
se
can come
enfrenta en
something like
Centroamérica,
that
¿no?
it's
Y
going
que
through
hace
Central
que
America
alrededor
now.
de 17
That
millones
makes
de
that
25 que
around
se considera
70 million
¿no? Provienen de Centroamérica.
Palestinians, the United States
Honduras,
coming from
Nicaragua, El Salvador.
coming from Honduras
Y eso, como
or
repito,
Nicaragua, El Salvador,
es
going to the
un tema
US. That is a
que se
subject
repite
that it
diariamente.
repeats
De ahí la
after
importancia
day
de
after
todo lo que
day, day
estamos
after
hablando.
day. That is why
Los
important. This is
refugiados
so
son
so
personas
important.
que
What we're
no
speaking
es
about.
refugiada
The
al
refugee,
momento de abandonar su país de origen,
it's not a person
pero
that
adquiere
it's not
tal
a refugee
condición
at the moment that
posteriormente,
leaves his
¿no?
country, but gets that
Cuando
condition the moment
salió de su
that
país
he
con
gets
todos
out and then goes into another country.
documentos,
When he got
la
from his country with
situación
all
legal
documents, all the legal
solucionada, pero
condition
llega
was a solution,
o pasa el tiempo,
was
pasa un tiempo y su
but when the
país de
time
origen
comes or
se
another
presenta
time passes
alguna
and
circunstancia que hace que él
past the
no
time in
pueda
his country,
regresar
something changes,
precisamente por
and that means that he
cualquiera de
cannot
las
go back
situaciones que hemos
to his country
mencionado
because
en
any of
los
the
dos recuadros
situations that we
anteriores
mentioned on
respecto
the
a la
backslides,
definición de lo
respect
que
with
es un
ethnicity
refugiado,
or
¿no?
definition what it is a refugee.
Otro
So
ejemplo,
another example we can go forward is that it's very clear from a person that's somebody that we know, it's Malula. It's a Pakistani girl that, because of defending the right of the women to education, was attacked. And there she had to get out of the country to, in fact, to get refugee in a third country, so she will not be threatened her life. As I was saying, all of these cases of refugees and migrants makes that in the country that these collective or single person resides, they deserve protection from international protection. So what we are referring on the next is this system of protection that is given by a juridical frame that I have mentioned, international treaties that will be pointing out later, and also the jurisdictional from international and another international courts from the region that are feeding from the observations and sentences from the Inter-American judge. They have made their own decisions, they have made their own criteria that establish what it is rights for people migrating. Also, this protection from this international protection will come to appear immediately when an act of discrimination is being made, or when it comes to violence that requires that migrants are taken in for this by the system that warrants his human rights here, their human rights, their fundamental human rights from migration, from the one that are requesting for homeland, the one that are refugees, the one that are subjecting. Right now, because of the time, we will not be able to dedicate to one in each these figures, especially to what it is subjects to, what it is outside from the countries, who are those people who they don't have a nationality or which their nationality has been taken away. On these cases, we are going to go over this concept so you can understand a little bit better. In front of these, we have an obligation from the states to respect their rights independently of a migration condition. This is fundamental and clear. we have to make here a
los
stop
derechos de
that
las personas
the
migrantes
rights from people,
no pueden
for migrating
estar
people,
limitados
cannot
por
be
su
limited
situación migratoria.
to
Evidentemente,
a
los
situation.
estados tienen
Obviously, the
la
states, they
potestad
have the
de definir
right
quién se
to
queda,
define
quién
who
se
stays
va,
or not,
de definir
to
cuáles son los
define
requisitos para
for
otorgar
what are the
esa
requirements to
protección.
give that
Pero lo que no
protection.
puede
But
hacerse,
what they
como
cannot
veremos
be
en los
done,
casos que a
as we are
continuación
going
les
to see here in the
traigo,
next
es
cases,
que no haya
is
un abordaje
there
desde el
are
enfoque
not
de los derechos
a
humanos
really
fundamentales.
focus from
La
associations
condición
that we repeat.
migratoria
The
es
condition, the
independiente
migrating condition is
del respeto y la
independently
garantía
from
de
the
los derechos
respect
humanos
and the warranty
fundamentales de este
from the
país.
international
Y
respect
por eso tenemos que
rights
dar
that
un
they have to take.
enfoque de
That is
derechos
why we
humanos
have to
y
focus
tenemos que
a
tener
human
articulaciones
right
tanto
way,
al
and we have
interior
to
de
be
nuestro
something
país como
articulated
en otros países que
as
reciben
well as
también
inside of the
a
country
estos
and outside
migrantes.
the outside countries that receive migrant people.
Como decía, aquí tenemos un marco
As I was
jurídico
saying,
que
we have a juridistical
específico,
frame here that it's a
y no voy a ir
specific,
uno por uno, ustedes lo pueden leer.
one by one, but you can
Resaltemos
read
sí
them.
el convenio nuevamente
I
sobre
can
el Estatuto de
highlight
los
the
Refugiados, su protocolo,
I can highlight the
de
protocol
Cartagena,
from the
en la que
Cartagena,
en donde se ha adoptado de
where
contenido
we
todos
adopted the
estos
context
principios y
on
valores que
the
tenemos que
full
tener en
context and
cuenta y que han sido
principles that, and
desarrollados,
values that
como
we
digo,
have and
por
we
la
have to
Corte
take into
Interamericana
consideration
y por
that
las
have been
convenciones
developed by the
de nuestros
international
países,
court
¿no?
and by the internal
Toda la
courts of our
gama
countries.
de
The whole
criterios,
spectrum of
principios
criteria
postulados,
of
por temas
postings,
de tiempo hemos escogido,
or because
o
of
mejor
time I
dicho,
have
hemos
just
traído
chosen, because
para
of
esta
time, where I
exposición
have
los
brought here for
postulados
these
de igualdad y no
exposition
discriminación, de
just
unidad
the posting
familiar,
of
de
equal
no
and the
devolución
family ones
y
and the ones of not
de interés
returning
superior de los niños y las
and
niñas. Así que
higher
vamos a
interest
empezar
of
con
boys
el
and girls. So I'm
postulado
going
de
to
la
start
igualdad
with
y no
the
discriminación. Tenemos
equal
opiniones
and no
consultivas de la
discrimination
Corte
postulate. We
Interamericana
have a
donde se
constitutive
señala que la
opinion
igualdad
from
se desprende
Nation
directamente de la naturaleza humana y es inseparable de la dignidad. Esa es la opinión consultiva
consultative
4.
from
La
numbers from
opinión consultiva
1894. The
8
notion of
sostiene que la
equality
igualdad y no
will
discriminación
go
pertenecen
from
al
directly
dominio del
from the
mismo
nature of human
juez.
and it's
Es
inseparable from the
imperativo y es
dignity.
erga omnes
Opinion
frente a
consultative number
todos y a
18
todos.
2003
De allí
holds
que
that the
si
equal,
las
it's
personas
no
migrantes
discrimination
tienen
belongs all to the domain
desigualdades
of the
en la
Jews'
ley
contents.
o sufren de desigualdades
There is not the same
estructurales de
law
facto,
for everybody, that
entonces
it's a
tenemos a
different
grupos de
from fact.
personas que se
Lawyers,
encuentran
we
en
have group of
situación de
persons that
vulnerabilidad.
belong or are
Y si
in
se encuentran en
really,
condición de
really bad
vulnerabilidad,
shape, and
es
if they are in really
obligación
bad
de los
shape
estados
or vulnerable,
atender a
it
sus
is an
particulares
obligation from the
circunstancias.
state attend those.
Mal, cierto,
And
habían
if that is
otras
true,
personas
there were
haciendo
some
la
other
misma
people doing
labor
the
o la misma
same
labor
labor or the
judicial,
same
era
commercial labor on the
solamente a
street.
este
It was
grupo
only to this
excepcional
group
a quienes se les perseguía.
who
El
were
Tribunal
being
Superior de
persecuted.
Justicia de Buenos Aires,
And the
analizando
Supreme
esta
Court from
situación,
Buenos Aires,
señaló
analyzing
que
this,
no era posible
points
que
out that it was not
colectivos
possible
por
that a
razones de
collective,
su
because of a reason
características
that
raciales
characteristics
o de
or
identidad
social or
nacional,
racial
que las
or
fuerzas de
international
seguridad los
identity,
detuvieran,
that the special
de
forces
secuestraran la mercadería y
them take the merchandise
prácticamente
away and
los
practically
maltrataran,
will
sometiéndolos a
harm
una
them
serie de situaciones
and
no
putting them through
acordes con el
situations that were
respeto a su
not
dignidad. Por lo
point out
tanto,
or that were
aquí
not
tienen ustedes un
coordinate with their
caso
dignity. So right here you have a
resuelto
case that is a
por un
resolved case
tribunal de justicia
by
de
a
un país hermano,
judge or
donde se
court
ve
from
claramente la
from a brother
discriminación
country
y la
where you can
vulneración
see
a la
clearly
igualdad.
the
Para
discrimination
esto,
to
miren,
the
he
equalness.
traído para la
Because of that,
exposición
I have
varios
bring here
casos en
for
los
the
que he
exposition
puntualizado todos los
several
datos.
cases
Como las
for where I
diapositivas
have
van
pointed
a
out
quedar,
all the data.
ustedes pueden
Like the slides are going to stay
ir
there
frente a esta
one by
repartida
one
de
in front
información que les
of
traigo
those,
y en los cuadernos de
and in
selección
your
de sentencias
notebooks
que la comisión
and your
que la comisión permanente ha
and where in the
elaborado.
notebooks where
Para
the commission
esto,
has wrote out for this,
ustedes
you
pueden
can
tener
check out in there and point it.
acceso,
For
como
this,
les
you can
digo,
have
por medio
access
de esta página o del
this
propio
page
cuaderno. Porque
or
no nos va a dar el tiempo, estoy segura,
this
para poder
or the book,
trabajar
because
cada
we will
caso,
not
como
have the
sería
time to
mi
work
intención.
every
Lo
case
que sí
as
les
is my
quiero decir,
intention.
quiero pedirles
Plus, I want to say or I want to
favor,
ask,
digámoslo así, que cada
I want
persona
to
que
ask you a
esté
favor. Let's see
escuchando
this.
la
That everybody
exposición
that is listening
pueda ponerse
to
en el
the
caso de una
presentation can
persona que solicita
be or can put
refugio. De
himself
repente puede
in the
pensar en
shoes of
alguna de las
somebody that is
razones
asking for
por las
refuge.
cuales
Maybe you can think about a reason why you'll be living your country, how you will feel in each one of those situations that I will be putting out. It's a very simple and important exercise because at the end of this presentation, you will be comprehending why is the rational way or what are the circumstances that mobilize the people to go out from their own home country land. That is why I was saying that Ecuador, in this particular case, takes this going from a constitutional court saying or from a strategical that points out for migrating people, especially to Venezuelans, to present a series of requirements that the administrative authorities were asking, in effect, to give out this protection, this to recognize to these people that are asking for refugee. But that was completely an aggression from the consideration of equality and no discrimination, because it was specifically to a group of migrating people who were living asked for documentations that they didn't have. This group of people will expose them as precisely to be object of to treatment, to sexual exploiting, or maybe labor exploiting, among others. And here I want to keep and put out and to keep very established, like has been done on the Inter-American Court, that you have to analyze case by case. You cannot send somebody out of the country, or you cannot make a collective go out of the country if it's not as you cannot attend a collective group without looking at every individual inside the group. And that is what it says Ecuador in this important sentence. We have an important sentence also where a lady from Ecuador was held in custody just because he had stayed here more than what it was given to her as a permanent time, but it was canceled her residency without giving at any moment the opportunity to defend herself, to know the reasons why she was canceled, or why her situation or her residency was canceled, and it was an expel order. That is why here it is clearly expressed the authorities involved are rights to give her the assistance, lawyers, to give her an attorney to defend her, and inform her why were the reasons they were proceeding on that way. I think that it is important to point out at this moment that these cases have been resolved by the regular law, sometimes by constitutional law, and some of them come from direct acting from organizations, sometimes from direct acting from military people, or from police officers. I have to point out here to clear out that it's not that the states cannot put out requisites. What they cannot put out is they cannot put out laws, or they cannot put something that dependent that beforehand that those requisites cannot be complied. They cannot do that. They cannot point out that unless if the requisites are being pointed out or established for a group that is from a certain population or a certain nationality. Because that has to be really clear, because right next we're going to see how the North Latin American country put there exists vulnerability like ethnic prejudice, xenophobia, racism. All of this difficulties the integration of migrating to the society, and it takes to impunity the violations of human rights. When we see the news, everyday news in our country, we can see that they are put that out, or they point out delinquishing to a person of certain nationality. It doesn't mean that it's for their nationality. It might be somebody just at the margin of the law. But maybe there's Peruvians, or there are Peruvians that are at the law margin. But sometimes the news will do what they'll do. It's to just fire out prejudices from xenophobia. That is precisely what the Inter-American Court has told us that we have to eliminate. We have to outcast, in effect, so we can attend the population that are more needed about this. The UN International Gathering point out in a resolution about the protections for migrating people that the fact that to be in that condition will generate them a vulnerability. Most of the times migration, or when you think about that in the best concept, the regular migrating people, they also face a series of irregularities or problems until they are able to mix with the population. Also, the language has to do about this, also with things they used to do that difficult, the way of adapting to the country, that in the same way, they have to be understand as conditions that will not allow them to access to justice in the same way as somebody will do, inequality. This is why we call it to the Brazilian law. Why the Brazilian law number 3 says, moving out from their nationality country can constitute especially for those people in irregular condition of migration. The migration condition, once again, we find out here that in the rules of Brazilian are put up together that it is pointed out that it cannot be an obstacle on justice for their human rights, defending them on that country. To understand this clarity, put out the second slide. I have bring here some other cases where you can visualize the situation of illness. I cannot speak about all of them, but I can talk about the energetic dorsema cases and others in the Dominican Republic. That's a condition where populations from a T, they were to cross the border from the Dominican Republic. They were detected by a military group. The military group started shooting out without stopping. They killed a few of them inside the truck. Also, the truck fell over. The ones who kept alive were persecuted, and the ones that were ill were treated very aggressively by the military people. Then afterwards, they went to court, they were let free. The Inter-American Court has put this case as a point-out case to see, which is a case that you can identify clearly credibility. It's a point-out just, it's being persecuted just because having a very well this is how potential when they are trying to, especially to go to trespass or to when they want to move inside their own territory or inside their own country, they were vulnerable as well. What it does is to go and keep on going, even they persecutes them actually even beforehand crossing the border. Give you a minute, please. Go back. In Costa Rica, please, the Supreme Court from Costa Rica. It's a recurrent that has an accident and has a security, but in Costa Rica tells him that you cannot give him the insurance because this law was only applied if it was a migrating people, regular migrating people, but it was conditioned that he didn't have. The next case. The cases that I'm gonna put next to within what is the principle of pro-people. Well, pro-people principle the interpretation that we have to give, the biggest way that we can brought this out, or we can apply the whole human rights, the interpretation is very extensive. And on the other side, an interpretation, restrictive interpretation, when it comes to not give the rights that we think, or that we think that will not belong there. This principle informs, it is a criteria that informs this interpretation for what the Inter-American Court does. In the consultative opinion, I don't have it here, but the consultative opinion, the number 25 from May 2018, points out that it is necessary to give out the aid to the maximum expression to all that people that are in need of this protection, from this international protection. This international protection in front or for the people that are forced to go outside from their country, from where they were born. Clearly, from this example we have here in this sentence that we have pointed out here today, in the case of from Chile, we have here that it's something about a case where go to register the birth of a boy, and then it was a couple of a Bolivian couple. They want to register the kid, and in the birth certificate, that it's a child of a moving foreigner. In some cases, the child of moving foreign people, they will not have the nationality from the country where they were born, because it is understood that the people was just moving from one place to another one, or just in a stationary state, or a son of a diplomat people. But it was not the point here. In this case, it was a Bolivian couple that he was residing in Chile in a not regular way, as a irregular migrating, but the kid was born in that circumstance. So the right for nationality, it is a fundamental right for the human. And in this sentence from Chile, it was applied the principle of pro people. It cannot be denied the nationality because on that, suppose that kid will be out of patria. In that case was what they point out, and how the administration act. It was how they acted was in the really difficult times, where there were a lot of Peruvians who were moving out to Chile. So Chile established that the kids from the couples in this condition who did not have the right for nationality. This happily has been reverted. Now it is understood that the nationality, it is an intrinsic right that it cannot be denied to nobody because of situations or conditions or migrating conditions. Nevertheless, in the case of this couple, and the next cases are in the same way, in the same line, but in the case of Colombia, very graphically and satisfying is only we were able to give the dignity to the kid whose the nationality was not given out to a Venezuelan kid, but also it is pointed out that migrating people has the right, has the human fundamental right, not only the civil and the political, but also the civil and economical one. This kid was a kid that had illness, tried to have to health, and it was a right that it was not being held because he did not have the nationality, and it was revert, but it was retaken by the Colombian law. It was revert the subject about not having the access to health and not having the nationality because he didn't have the valid documents. This is a principle. This is the cornerstone principle from the International Migrating People International Association. The principle of not returning. I did not put the phrase, but the principle of not refoulement. It means that it is prohibited to send back a people or person that has requested nationality to the territory or to where the place where his life or liberty cannot be threatened, or where he has an imminent risk for persecution, or because in the border, immediately, if you put it immediately on the border, they will be taken in prison. This is something that it is really clear for us, where we have visited borders where have been seen populations by hundreds waiting for their point to cross. If that at that time they are taken apart and we tell them we don't have a passport, immediately I'm going to turn him back. Peru will be committing a serious, real serious violations to the rights and not complying with the obligations for the international obligations, because the principle of it is the one is the cornerstone for we hold out the whole international protection system to return a people person to their country of original. You have to analyze, you have to take a process, an administrative process in which you give the full rights of any process to the person that it's requesting that status. A person that cannot be deported, a person that cannot be excluded, or his residency canceled without being heard, without being a hearing so we can attend the circumstances, particularly that person is alleging that thing that puts his liberty or lives in risk. This is something that it's very important that you, at this point for this exposition, can be follow me or can go or look inside you. This obligation of not returning, that is very effective for, I will be considering this presentation very successful. This is why the next, this is a Chinese residence that it was being required from an international capture by something that was from smuggling. In China, smuggling at that point that it was penalty by death penalty. So if we put that people outside on extradition and the citizen was deported or was extradited or was deported, that was the route followed to China, the situation for these men will be ending up as with his death. So he had to make a series of actions, constitutional actions, so in order that he will be declared that it could not be, that situation cannot, as his life was being put in risk. Now, later China held that the death penalty will not be point out for those cases, but that is another point that we're not going to be taking into the table. What we're going to highlight here, that is that if we had been put that gentleman back to his country, the country Wahong Wing, probably at this moment it will not be alive. So this principle of not returning, that is connected with the Inter-American Commission to sanction torture, Article 13, and what has to be looked into. Not only the international system brings the just two instruments from international instruments, but also the treaties that come from the international treaties and all the civil, cultural, and the international convention as interconnecting together to give the solutions to the process in particular. Now, next sentences, also especially the ones that we see in Colombia, what is being established is that the non-returning, the whole warranties have to be put into the people. So if the case possibility that it's not impossible to give the refugee status,
que todas las
it is
garantías en ese
verified
momento,
that
de
the
lo
whole
civil
warranties at that
administrativo,
point, from that warranties
empezando
and the
por el derecho
administrative
a ser
procedure,
informado de lo
started
que
with the
se le
right
imputa o se
to
le
be
atribuye,
informed what is
el
been
derecho a
happening,
contar con un abogado,
the
el
right
derecho a
to
contar
have
con
a
un
lawyer,
intérprete.
the right
Decíamos
to
cuando
have an
hablamos de las
interpreter.
condiciones de vulnerabilidad que una de esas
We were
barreras que
saying when we were
impiden
thinking
el
about
acceso a la
vulnerability,
justicia
one of those
precisamente
barriers
es el tema del
will
idioma.
not allow
Y el tema del
the
idioma,
access
en un
to
caso de
jurisdiction is the
refugiados, es de
language.
singular
In a
importancia.
refugee language, it takes
Hay
special
idiomas que no se
importance.
parecen en
There are
nada, por
languages
ejemplo, al,
that they don't
al,
look
al
alike like
español,
the
al
other one.
castellano,
They don't look
y
alike
hay
to
inclusive
the
señas que
Spanish.
no tienen nada
Inclusively,
que
there
ver
are
con las
signs that have
culturas
nothing to do
nativas
with
de señas
cultures
que nosotros tenemos.
or the signs
Por
that
eso es
we
que
have.
en un caso ahí
In a
en Perú,
case in Peru,
también se declaró nula la
also it
orden de
was declared
expulsión
new
debido a
the
la
expel order
violación del debido
because of the
proceso,
violations
¿no?
of the right
En
of
ese debido, en ese
in
proceso
that
donde se
process,
determinó la
in the right
expulsión de
process,
un
where it was
ciudadano
determined
brasileño,
the expelled of a
se
Brazilian citizen,
verificó que no se había
that it was
cubierto, no se
not the
había
whole
rodeado de
process
las
was not
garantías que
the
estamos
process was not taken in with the
mencionando
full warranties that
de
we are
manera muy
mentioning.
rápida, pero son
We are
garantías
mentioning
formales
here
y
those
materiales
very fast
presentes
because
en
those
todo
are warranties that are
procedimiento
present in
administrativo
any
migratorio,
administrative
aún
procedure
más si
for
este es sancionador.
migrants.
Esta
Even
sentencia del
if it's
de un
from an
ciudadano
accusing one.
brasileño
This
a través
sentence
de
from
un
a Brazilian
amparo
citizen
logra que se
that
le notifique
through
una
an
resolución de la
appeal, he
Superintendencia
was
Nacional de
able to give
Migraciones que lo
that
obligaba a salir
international
del
sentence
país.
for migration
Fue
that
o
obliged him to
ganó
go
el
out,
premio Sentencias
and
de
he
Acceso a la
won the
Justicia de Personas
sentence
Migrantes
prize
que otorgó
people
ACNUR en el año
that
2017.
ACNUR gave in the year
Entonces,
2017.
sí, otro tema nos
Now,
queda
another
muy
subject
claro
that
es
we
de las
have to
garantías
be very clear
formales y
with is that the
materiales
formal
en ese proceso,
warranties and
en ese
material
procedimiento
warranties in that
administrativo
process, in
migratorio
this procedure,
sancionador,
migrating
tiene que
procedure,
tener
that
las
it was had a
mismas
sentence,
garantías que
had
la
the same
Convención
warranties
Americana en
that
el artículo
the
8 del
American
95 de la
Convention,
Convención
that in
Americana de
Article
Derechos
8 and
Humanos
25, the
obliga,
International Commission
obliga a
of
todos
Rights
los estados a respetar y el Perú es estado
states
parte,
on
por lo
to
tanto debe de cumplir,
keep up
¿no?
with the whole
El
rules and
tribunal
regulations.
ha
So as Peru, we have
considerado,
to comply. The court
otros
has
tribunales han
considered,
considerado
and some of the
también
courts have
que
considered
exigir, por
that
ejemplo,
to
antecedentes de
ask
certificados
for
penales para
criminal
tener ese
records,
elemento
to have that
condicional
element as an
en
additional
una
in
posibilidad de
a
otorgar
possibility of giving
refugio, junto
refugee,
con documentos,
along with
por ejemplo, un
documents
pasaporte al
like
día,
passport
resultarían
to
siendo
up-to-date
también
passport will be
circunstancias que
also
no son posibles de
circumstances that are not possible
cumplir, de reunirse. Y
to
por lo
obtain
tanto,
or gather. So
pues,
that is why we have
elementos que sirven
the
para cada
elements
caso
that you
en
will be
concreto que
working for
sustenta el
each case
principio de no
in individual
devolución,
case
¿no?
that will be putting up the principle
Principio
of
de
not
unidad
returning.
familiar, que
The unity
creo
of the
que todos
family unity
entendemos
principle,
bien, que es el
understand
hecho
that
de
very
otorgar
well.
una
It is the
protección
fact that
integral
to
a
give
todos los miembros
a
de una
protection
familia
to the whole
que se
member of
ven muchas
family
veces vulnerados
are
o que
being
incluso
not
no
compliant
son
or maybe
atendidos en su
are not
total
being
magnitud
intent on the
cuando
whole
no se entiende que
extension
muchas veces
when
las
it
familias
is not
optan
understood
por
when a
mandar a los
family
niños solos o acompañados
it
de
is not
otras
understood
personas,
when they say
precisamente
that
en
the
esa búsqueda de
family
alguna
takes the consideration
mejor
to send
vida
their
para
kids
sus hijos y
alone
para sus
in the
hijas.
way of looking a
Entonces,
better
si ya de por medio
kind of
hay
life.
una
So
situación
if
de
there's also a
desprendimiento de los
situation of
padres, de las madres,
separating parents
es
from their
obligación de los
child,
estados
it is an
proveer a
obligation
que cuando
from the
se
states to
pueda
give out when it's possible to
observar
give,
plenamente este
and when it's
principio de unidad
possible to
familiar en
observe
los
this
casos que
unity,
conocemos, esto
right? In the
sea
cases
una
we know,
realidad.
this is
La
a
siguiente, por
reality.
favor.
Next, please.
Ahí tenemos una opinión
There
consultiva,
you
por
can see
ejemplo,
an
la
opinion
21
from the
que
consultative
los
opinion,
invito a revisar,
201,
es de,
which I invite you
del
to double check.
2014, es del 2014,
It
la
is
opinión
from
consultiva
2014.
21,
The consultative opinion number 21 holds that in the migrating context, it is an obligation from the state, from the receiving state, to ensure the protection of the kids, to avoid the condition that they can be end as apatrid. So the procedure to determine the condition of refugee has to have mechanisms, complete mechanisms, because it means to give out special protection because they are kids. But in this way, what the court points out is that there are special rights that have to be looked into. That is permit that the kids can request the refugee status, and they cannot be rejected all of a sudden. Let's think about you're in the border. They are alone. We are going to put them back. But their parents came here before, and we don't take that principle of family unity. That is why, number one, allow the kid to request refugee, not returning them back as number two, precisely to the country they are returning, because we do not know what were the circumstances that they threatened their life. We don't know what was threatening on their integrity. So do not returning them and not returning them will be articulated in the first with no discrimination, not returning, and number three, family to unity. Now, give them the international protection where the kids qualify to that, to recognize this right and to recognize the location of their family and their parents were from Haiti, not be allowed them to do nothing. So the international court had to intervene for them to have a birth certificate, and it will not be broken the bound with their family, which had requested the refugee situation. The mother had requested that earlier, and then she requested for the kids later on. This is another Peruvian family in Bolivia. In that case, because of the situation of the parents, the administrative authorities decided that the whole family was going to be expelled. That in that case, the kids had no rights whatsoever, no international rights. They were treated as things. That is why here we come in, that the court comes in and steps in and brings out that the kids have the rights to adopt special rights, special to keep them in on a broader way. That concept of the family situation cannot be violated, and the parents go along with the rights of the children on the family status. Under this circumstance, yeah, we have more cases, a lot against time. In all these cases, there is highlighted the necessity of protection measures for kids. I'm gonna go with next. I'm gonna leave you all the slides here. And here in the access to justice, which is a theme that bonds us on a direct way to the judges here involved, we're going to look what I have put here in front of them because of the migrating people. And we have to give this international protection, eliminating and diminishing and eliminating all the barriers and obstacles that will not allow the access to equal rights. That is why we have to work harder to put away those cultural barriers like language, like religion, not knowing the legislation that they have to observe. Now, we have there Articles 8 and 25, plus the Brazilian laws and the access with no discrimination to digital resources that would allow them to come with their rights. Interested about another cases, you can go and check. It can be interesting, maybe, that as a public policies, the judicial power comes along an inside major plan, a national plan, the condition of migrating people. And we have done a lot of activities, and there is work from the commission that is followed by the consultative opinions that have made point out the legislation that has been done to regulate and enhance the migration flow. That are needed for the solicitation, that a solicitation is requested to give the status of refugees. It is the Executive Commission Special for the Refugees. You can put that on the offices of decentralized offices. You have to request on the border or inside the familiar territory. It has to be by written. If you don't have a passport, if you don't have all the data that are requested here, you have to explain what is the reason why you don't have them. Reasons why, you know why. But sometimes those are requisites that are established.
A efectos de presentar sus solicitudes, porque en épocas de pandemia todo se está haciendo de manera virtual. Una vez que se presente esa solicitud de condición de refugiado, se le otorga una solicitud de refugiado,
an ID from a migrant ID will be given to him because it works for the person to have in this country the liberty of work, the liberty of reside legally inside our country. Even it gives a work permit. It is 60 days and it can be renewed. The ones that were active, that I want to have active at least right now, as the international relations with Mr. David, it is given until the end of this month of July of 2021. Next, I'm not going to mention one by one, but these are the activities that we have taken care of on effects to enhance the international protection to migrant people. A series of activities that have compromised our work and our effort and our convictions that right now we have to participate to you and to win more people to these objectives. The encounters from several countries that we have made with Ecuador, we have made with Brazil, along with the pictures you can see here, the virtual pictures as well, because we have not stopped doing those. As Carmen Argibay was saying, a very remind Supreme Court judge, she was saying that stop, it's going back, not stop. And in this occasion, from the hand from ACNUR, on the hand from either to end out in the last slide, I want to go out. I want to give it clear on what I was telling you. This is the book of sentences that I was mentioning about. That's the emblematic sentences book that you can access and you can consult. It is very important, and it has practically the whole sentences that I brought in for the presentation on today. The last it is a reflection that goes hand by hand with a little effort that imagine that we are those migrating people that have to move, and they have to move, and their life goes through here to go to a country that vulnerability measures has been taking place. So migrants are essential members of the society that contribute to comprehension of mutual and to development of sustainable and communities on the origin of their destiny. The whole migrants have the same right of equalness, protection to the whole rights they have. This is Antonio Guterres' words from the Secretary General from the UN, and I am just pointing out here today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to IDETUC. Thank you very much to the Association of the International Judge Association through Esteban Lemus. Thank you very much to ACNUR. Thank you very much to ACNUR through Federico Agusti. Good afternoon. Thank you for your attention. I would thank the exponent of Janet Gilardi, Supreme Court Judge and President from the Permanent Commission to Access to the Justice and the Digital Power from Peru.
A continuación, vamos a presentar
Now, next, I'm
comentarios
going to
sobre
present
el
comments
cuaderno de sentencias
to the
emblemáticas,
sentence book,
que estará a cargo
emblematic
de
book from.
dos importantes profesionales.
He will be in charge of
Presentamos
two
primero a la
important
doctora
professionals. First, I'll
Elizabeth
be
Salmón
presenting
Garate,
Elizabeth Salmon
directora
Garate,
ejecutiva del Instituto de Democracia de la
Executive
Pontificia
Director
Universidad
from the
Católica del
Democratic
Perú.
Executive
La doctora
Council
Elizabeth
of Peru.
Salmón es doctora en Derecho
Dr.
Internacional por la
Elizabeth Salmon,
Universidad
she
de
is
Sevilla
international,
y profesora
doctor from the
principal de
Sevilla
Derecho
University, and
Internacional de
professor
la
for
Pontificia
principal
Universidad Católica del Perú.
rights from
Es
Pontifical
directora ejecutiva del
Peruvian
Instituto de
University.
Democracia
She is
y Derechos
executive
Humanos
director
de
from
dicha casa de estudios. Forma parte del
from
Comité
House of
Asesor
Studies.
del Consejo de Derechos
She's
Humanos
part
de
of the
Naciones
committee,
Unidas.
assistant from the
Asimismo,
UN.
es jurista experta
Also,
extranjera
she's
para actuar
an expert
como
judge on
amicus
the
curiae
international rights
de la Jurisdicción
of
Especial
the
para la Paz en Colombia.
for the
Autora de varias
peace in
publicaciones
Colombia.
en Derecho Internacional Público, Derecho
Writer,
Internacional
some
de los Derechos
authors, some
Humanos,
books,
Derecho Penal Internacional,
international
Derecho
rights,
Internacional
law,
Humanitario y
and
Justicia
committed international law
Transicional.
and
Ha sido
justice
directora
for
de la
migrants.
Maestría de Derechos Humanos
She
de
has
la
been
Pontificia
director
Universidad
for
Católica del Perú, consultora en los Ministerios de Justicia y de Defensa del Perú, así como de la
Peru,
Comisión de la
and
Verdad y
also at the
Reconciliación
Commission
Peruana,
of
de las Naciones
Reconciliation
Unidas
for
y
Peruvian
del Comité
Wars,
Internacional de
and
la
the
Cruz Roja.
Committee for International
Adelante,
Red
doctora.
Cross.
Bienvenida.
Go on, doctora.
¿Qué
Please,
tal?
welcome.
Muy buenas tardes a todos
Good
y a
afternoon.
todas.
Good afternoon to everybody.
Doctora Janet Tello, qué
Doctora
gusto
Janet
escucharla,
Tello,
jueza
it's a
titular
pleasure
de la
to
Corte
hear you.
Suprema de Justicia de la República
Prime
del
judge
Perú
from the Peru,
y
from the
presidenta
country,
además de la Comisión Permanente de
and
Acceso a la
president from the
Justicia
Commission
de
of
Personas
Permanent
en
Access
Situación
to
de
Justice,
Vulnerabilidad y
person
Justicia
from
en Comunidad.
vulnerability people
Doctor Esteban
community,
Lemus, juez tribunal
Dr. Esteban Lemos,
administrativo de Costa Rica, presidente del
administrative
capítulo
judge
de
from
las
Costa
Américas
Rica,
de la Asociación
president from the
Internacional
Chapter
de
of Americas,
Jueces en
from the
Refugio
International
y
Association of
Migración,
Judges for
y
Migrant
estimado Federico
and Refugee,
Ayusti,
and Mr.
representante del
Federico
Alto
Ayusti,
Comisionado de las Naciones
representative
Unidas
of the
para
High Commission from the
Refugiados,
UN
ACNUR,
for the
en
refugees,
nuestro
ACNUR,
país. Para
in our
mí,
country.
en estos
For me,
breves minutos, es
in these
verdaderamente un gusto
small minutes, it is a very
sumarme
pleasure
a esta
to add
reflexión
my
colectiva
contribution to this
acerca de
reflection
la
on a
necesidad
collective reflection
imperiosa de
about
encontrar
the
la mejor
precise
protección
need
para las
that we need to
personas
find for the best
refugiadas
protection
y
for the refugees
migrantes en
and
nuestra región.
migrating in our
Por
region.
eso, desde un
That is
primer
why,
momento, asumimos
from
con
my first
muchísimo
point,
entusiasmo
we
la
assume with a lot
elaboración
of
y, por
happiness
supuesto,
the
cooperación con las demás
elaboration, obvious,
instituciones de
with
este cuaderno de
cooperating with the other
sentencias
institutions with
emblemáticas,
this emblematic
precisamente para la
sentence
protección y
book.
garantía de los derechos de las
So
personas refugiadas,
specifically for the protection
migrantes
for
y
migrating people and
latinoamericanos.
migrating people in
Este
that
trabajo
people in that
que
South
ustedes, por
America.
supuesto, tienen a
This
su disposición, fue
joint
llevado a
work
cabo por 3 jóvenes
we have, it
investigadoras
was
de nuestro
taken
instituto,
by
Cecilia
three
Luan, Emily
Cecilia
Burgos y
Luan,
Andrea
Emily Wood,
Carrasco.
and Andrea Carrasco.
Revisó un
It
total de
was
86 casos de la
80 cases,
jurisprudencia
86
de
cases
varios países
from jurisdictions
emitidas
from
hasta el
several countries
2019 y
emitted until
concernientes a estos temas.
2019 and concerning to
Este
these subjects.
trabajo se focalizó en
Was focused in
Perú, por supuesto,
Peru, of course,
Ecuador, Colombia,
in
Argentina y
Ecuador,
Chile,
Colombia, Argentina, and
porque
Chile,
se trataba de estados que tienen
because
un sistema de
there
justicia
were
más o
states that
menos
had
similar, por supuesto que hay diferencias, pero más o menos
they
similar,
had a law
y
system that's
tienen
very
también
similar,
como un
and they
punto en
also
común
have
esta,
as a joint point
este flujo de
this
personas
flow of
refugiadas y
people,
migrantes que están
migrant people, a flow of
llegando a
migrant
estos
people that
países
are
y que
coming to their
requieren
countries,
una
and they
respuesta
require
también desde la
a
Administración de
resolution
Justicia.
from the Justice
Los
Administration
86 casos
cases
revisados
that
en
were
el marco de
revised
esta
in that
investigación
frame of the investigation.
comprendieron tanto lo que se llamó
They
casos
took in consideration
emblemáticos
cases like
y en
emblematic
esa
cases,
medida
and
se
in that
buscó
measure, we
casos que
looked
tuvieran que ver con
for
igualdad
cases
y
that
no
had cases
discriminación,
that had to do
procedimientos
with
migratorios,
equality, with
derecho a la
migrating
nacionalidad y la
procedures,
patria,
rights for
derechos
nationality and
específicamente
patria,
relacionados con las personas
specific
refugiadas, como
rights
muy bien ha explicado la
specific
doctora
for
Tello
refugees,
durante
like
estos
Dr. Tello
minutos,
explained very
y el
clear,
tema de
and
derechos
also the
sociales.
subject of the
Pero
social
también
rights.
se
But
buscó
also,
un
it
total
looked
de 40 casos que se
we looked
denominó
around 40 cases that
relevantes.
we
¿Y
said that
por
was
qué se
relevant,
les
and
dio
why they
esta
were that
calificación?
status
La idea es que
was
debían
to they
establecer
had
un
to be
precedente
established, or they had to
importante.
establish
De
a
pronto era la
start point.
primera vez que,
Maybe it was
o
the
la primera
first time,
sentencia, ¿no es
maybe it
así?,
was
en
the first
reconocer este
sentence
derecho,
to recognize that
que
right,
ampliaba o
maybe
reducía el
because it
contenido de un derecho
enhanced or
humano,
reduced
También se tomó en
the
cuenta
right
el
of a
hecho de si
human
la
people
sentencia
maybe
había
was
sido
taken into
resultado de lo que se llama
consideration,
un
if the
litigio
sentence
emblemático
was
y
well carried.
también finalmente si es que
Finally, if because
contribuía, ¿no es así?, a
if
una
it
línea
was giving out,
jurisprudencial de algún
it
derecho en
was
particular.
enhancing, or it was
Los
pointing out something
hallazgos
else
de este
to a
estudio
particular right.
son
The findings of this
tremendamente
study
interesantes.
are very
Yo creo
interesting.
que hay
I
pocos
think that
trabajos de este tipo
there are a little less or
en
maybe
la
none
región
works of this type on the
y en
region
nuestro país.
and in our country.
Se llega a algunas
We
conclusiones con
come
relación a
to
las
some
principales líneas
conclusions,
jurisprudenciales
especially
muy
among the first
garantistas en
lines
muchos
of
casos
juridical points,
de estos
very
poderes
characteristics
judiciales,
and
como les
points,
digo, hasta el año
very
2019. Sería muy
characteristical from
interesante,
these
por
juridical
ejemplo,
points or
ver qué ha
these
pasado, ¿no es así?, en el
juridical
2020 y en el 2021, porque
laws,
como
that
todos
it will be
sabemos, las
very good to see what has
circunstancias
happened on
están
2020,
resultando
2021,
extremas
because we know
todavía
that the
y a
circumstances are
situaciones
being
extremas,
extreme,
creo
and
que
the extreme
también
situations
corresponden
also correspond
soluciones
to
creativas, soluciones que
very
realmente logren
creative
salvar las
solutions. We have
dificultades.
to put solutions out.
Como
They
les
can
decía,
save the
dentro de los
situations.
hallazgos
As I was
está, creo
saying,
yo,
among the
esta
findings, we have
tendencia
this tendency, we
garantista
have
de
this
muchos
warranty
jueces y
tendency
juezas, de
from
muchos
a lot of
tribunales de la
judges
región, en
from the
que
region
se
that
reconoce,
we
como señalaba la doctora
recognize,
Tello,
like
esta situación
Mr. Tello
de
was pointing
vulnerabilidad
out,
que viven
it is
estas
being bringing
personas,
out the
que pone
vulnerability
en riesgo
situation that
ciertamente
these
muchos
people
de sus
is
derechos, incluso
living,
su vida,
that
pero
point
al
out or
mismo
put in risk
tiempo
their
el
rights, even their
estudio, y eso
life,
me parece
but
interesante
also the
porque es como una
study.
agenda de trabajo
And I
para el
think that is
futuro,
very interesting because, like,
también
it's a future
reconoce
agenda to
que en
work with.
algunos
It is
casos, en algunos
recognized that in
países,
some cases and in some
hay
countries,
bien
there
incoherencia
is
entre algunos
very
fallos
not
y
things that are
otros,
not being taken
pero
care,
también
or there are some
algunas
things that are not
omisiones,
equal in
algunas
some
ausencias que
sentences,
pueden
but
tener
sometimes
múltiples
omissions
explicaciones, no se llega a
that can have a
identificar esas
lot of
explicaciones
explanations, but those
en el
explanations are not
estudio,
being given on the
pero
study.
estas
These
incoherencias,
these things
omisiones,
that are not the same
creemos
or
que
omissions,
pueden
we
ser
think that can
fácilmente
be
revertidas
very well
con un
reversed. They can
trabajo
go back. We can
serio
work with them
de
with a serious work,
acompañamiento,
with
de apoyo, ¿no
accompanying
es
them,
así?, en el conocimiento y en la especialización
sharing them
de
with
estos temas.
knowledge
No, no existe,
about these
o no se ha
subjects,
logrado demostrar en todo
sharing
caso,
knowledge. We
una
have not been able to
percepción
demonstrate
de
a
rechazo
perception
cerrado,
that a rejection
irreversible con relación a
perception
estos temas.
it's been put
Bueno,
out
los
and that
temas
it can be brought
que
back.
el estudio aborda, como señalé,
Subjects that
fueron
the
el tema de
study brings
igualdad y
out
no
with
discriminación. Es
are
un tema
equality,
muy
not
importante, muy
discrimination, a very
complejo.
important
Muchas veces
subject,
parece muy
very
sencillo,
complex
pero no es
subject.
tan complejo.
Sometimes
Ya se han señalado
it's
varios de los
easy, but
casos
it's
en la
not easy.
presentación de la
You can
doctora
see in
Tello.
some of those cases
Por
for
ejemplo, creo
Dr.
que aquí
Tello's
en este tema
presentation. I think that in this subject we
el
can,
abordaje de este tema
or I
beneficiarse
can
mucho de un
brought over
enfoque interseccional
that
al
the
resolver los
way you can
casos.
view that
Es
is like
decir,
a
tener en cuenta que
intersection
muchas
depending on who
veces
sees it, or
coexisten, ¿no es así?,
taking
una
into
serie de
consideration that
factores de
sometimes
vulnerabilidad en
coexist
una misma
a
persona y por
vulnerability
lo tanto su
or
situación
some
tiene que ser
conditions are
leída
mixed in the
de
same
esta manera
person. So
multidimensional, desde
that's why
múltiples
his
aristas
situation
y
has to
no
be
desde una visión
looked out from
estática
multiple
donde
ways and
solo
not from a
un
static way,
elemento,
from just
la
one
edad o
element,
el género
the
o la
age or
raza o el
gender or
idioma
race or
sean los
language.
determinantes.
They are the ones who've been
También
determined the
hay retos
situation.
importantes
Also,
en
there are
relación a los
challenges, very
procedimientos
important to
migratorios. Creo que
procedures or
nuestros países
migrating procedures.
definitivamente no
I think
estaban
our countries
preparados,
were not
al menos de
prepared
manera similar, para dar
not on a similar
respuesta
way to
a este
adapt or
flujo
to give answer
y
to this
por lo
flow.
tanto
And
hay
also,
algunos
that is
aspectos
why
de acceso a la
there are some
justicia, de debido
access to
proceso,
justice
que
and
de quizá
process
una
and
visión
right
muy
process, maybe
administrativista del procedimiento en
a
sí
vision
mismo,
that it's only a
quizá un poco
desk work vision, but not a
alejado en
full vision.
algunos casos o en
Maybe
algunas
sometimes
circunstancias,
far
no, no digo
away,
definitivamente de manera
but maybe
general,
in some, not
de
general,
una
but in
clara
some
conciencia de que son
way, are
procedimientos
away from a
migratorios,
clear conscience
administrativos,
that
de
those
control
processes of
migratorio,
control or migrating
tienen una
control,
estrecha
they
relación
have a
con
really
otros derechos humanos de las personas refugiadas
straight
y migrantes
relationship
que
with
no
another
pueden ser
rights
dejados
that
de
cannot be
vista.
put aside or cannot be left
También
over.
hay casos
Our
interesantes sobre el
cases,
tema de
very
la
important
nacionalidad, la
cases about
patria, y no voy a
nationalities,
repetir esto
uh,
porque acaba de ser
citizens,
señalado
since I
de
will
una
not
manera muy
repeat
clara,
because it was
pero
very
creo que
pointed out
también
very
son como
clearly,
temas
but I think those
incipientes
are
en la
subjects that
jurisprudencia,
are like incipient
que
concepts
incluso
that
en el
are
marco
not
mismo de
being
la
taken into
jurisprudencia
consideration
interamericana
that
en que es
inter-American
necesario
jurisprudence,
quizá
where it's
expandir algunos
necessary to expand
lentes de análisis, algunos indicadores,
analysis
algunos
lens, some
estándares
indicators,
claros,
some
precisos,
standards, some
que
clear
ayuden en el
standards
proceso de toma de
that will help
decisiones.
on what is taking
También
decisions.
hay
Also,
temas que la
there are
verdad yo
subjects
sé que suenan
that the truth is
tremendamente
that I know that it
difíciles en
sounds
este
very
contexto,
difficult
pero yo
to
estoy
comply in
segura de
this
que ustedes también
context,
coincidirán
but I'm pretty
conmigo
sure
de que
that
no
you
solo
will
son
be agree with me
temas
that those
difíciles,
are not
sino
only
temas
subjects that are
urgentes, como es el
difficult,
tema
but they are
del
also urgent,
acceso a
like
los
the
derechos
access
sociales
to
por
human rights or
parte
access to social
de
rights
las
that
personas
on the side
refugiadas
that
o
refugees
migrantes.
don't have and
Creo que
migrants don't
esta
have.
pandemia
This
ha puesto
pandemic
sobre la
has
mesa el
put
tema de
on
la
the
salud
table
de una manera
the health subject
tremenda,
on an enormous way,
imposible de voltear la
impossible
mirada, es un
to
tema
look aside
central en
and
la vida
look
de
around
todos
to
y
the
de
other
todas,
way,
y por
because it's a
supuesto,
central
creo
point
que
in
esto es
our
también
lives.
central,
And that is
como no
why
iba a
it's
ser
central,
en la vida
why
de
it
las
should not
personas que
be
se
central
encuentran
in the
en
lives
circunstancias de vulnerabilidad,
or
precisamente
will
por esa
not be
situación de
specific in the
movilidad
people that it's being in migration
en la que
conditions
están.
because of the
Entonces,
mobility
yo
situation they are right
quiero
now.
decirles
That
que
is why I want to tell you
pienso que hay todavía un
that
camino por
there's a
recorrer.
way that we have to
Creo que
go.
hay
There's a
una
way we have to go. I think there
disposición
is a
que no
disposition
es negativa
that is
a
not
estos
negative
temas,
to this
pero
to these
creo
subjects, but
también que
I
esa
also think that
disposición,
that
esa
disposition,
buena voluntad no debe quedarse
goodwill, will
solamente en un
not
tema de
go
buena
and stay
voluntad,
as
sino que debe
goodwill.
acompañarse
It has
de
to go and
conocimiento
has to be
claro, de
companioned by a
estándares
real
precisos,
knowledge,
de
by
ideas
precise
claves
standards
que puedan
of
ayudar
key
en el proceso de
ideas
toma de
that will
decisiones.
help on the
Estamos viviendo una
process
situación muy
on,
difícil para todos, también
decision-making
para los
process.
operadores,
It is a
operadores de
very difficult
justicia,
point
y creo que por
for
eso
all
la
the
labor de la academia,
justice,
y lo digo, por
for all
supuesto,
the
a nombre
justice
del
chain.
Instituto de
That's what I'm
Democracia y
saying,
Derechos
the
Humanos de
academy, and
la
I'm saying
Pontificia Universidad
in behalf
Católica
of
del
the
Perú,
institute,
pero también desde el punto de vista de la cooperación
but
internacional,
also from the
y
point
aquí
out
está
from
precisamente
international
ACNUR para
co
recordarnos ese
cooperation,
apoyo
and
que
that is why
también
ACNUR is here to point
tenemos
out
en estos temas
and
y en
remember
muchos más, por supuesto, creo que son
the
fundamentales.
shouldering that we have from
Solamente
there. And I think that is
sumando fuerzas,
fundamental.
solamente
Only
haciendo
adding
sinergia,
forces,
solamente
only doing
dándonos la
synergia, only
mano,
doing
tratando de
movement and giving our
dialogar
hands
acerca de
together
este
and
tema,
trying to
sin
talk about
prejuicios,
this
sin estereotipos,
without
con una
stereotypes
convicción
and with a
profunda acerca de los
conviction
derechos
that
humanos,
it's
es que
deep
vamos a
conviction
poder
about human
seguir
rights. It's that
avanzando.
we can
Muchísimas
keep
gracias
on
por
going on. Thank you very
trabajo,
much
muchísimas
for this
gracias por
work.
esta oportunidad
Thank you
y
very much for this opportunity.
gracias también por su atención.
And thank you so much for your attention.
Agradecemos la intervención de la doctora
Thank you so
Elizabeth
much. The
Salmón
intervene
Gárate,
of
directora
Elizabeth Silva
ejecutiva del
Salmon Gárate,
Instituto de
Executive
Democracia de la
Director of
Pontificia
Democracy
Universidad Católica del
from
Perú.
the University
Muchas
of
gracias.
Peru.
A continuación,
Thank you so much.
invitamos al doctor Federico
Right
Agusti,
next, we'll be inviting Dr.
representante del
Federico
Alto
Augusti,
Comisionado de las
representative of the
Naciones
High
Unidas
Commission
para
of the
los
UN
Refugiados,
for the
ACNUR.
Refugees, ACNUR.
El doctor Federico Agusti es
Dr.
licenciado en
Federico
Derecho por la
Augusti
Universidad de
is
Buenos Aires, con
licensed
estudios
at
de
the University of
posgrado en
Buenos Aires
Políticas
with
Públicas, Inmigraciones
studies in postgraduate
Internacionales
studies
Objetivas en
and
Argentina.
migration
Tiene
international,
más de 20 años de experiencia
more than
trabajando
20
para los
years of experience
refugiados y
working with
migrantes
refugees
desde
and
diferentes
migrating people
ámbitos. Ha
since
ejercido
from
como
different
docente en
places. He has
instituciones como la Universidad
worked
de Buenos
as
Aires
professor
y la
in
Universidad
University
Nacional
of
3 de
Buenos
Febrero de
Aires
Argentina,
and
y tiene
Universidad de
una larga
Febrero de
trayectoria como
Argentina. He has a
panelista
long
en múltiples
trajectory as
seminarios
a
y congresos a
showroom
nivel
expository
internacional.
and
Doctor
international
Federico Agusti,
experience.
adelante.
Dr. Federico Augusti, please go on.
Muchas gracias, Cristian. Es la verdad que un verdadero
Thank you
placer
so
para
much,
mí estar con
Christian.
ustedes
It
en
is a
este
pleasure to
evento
be here with you
entre
right
grandes
now
autoridades del Poder Judicial y
with
también
so
de la
much
academia. Varias
enhanced
de mis
people
colegas,
from the
debo decir, de
academy.
ACNUR han
Some of my
estudiado y han
colleagues from
aprendido de
ACNUR
algunas de
have
las
studied and
distinguidas
have learned
ponentes que
from
están aquí
most
presentes.
of the people that
Me
have in here.
sumo como decía
So
Elizabeth, a los
I add
saludos al
myself
doctor
to
Esteban
Elizabeth,
Lemos,
to the
juez del
welcomes,
Tribunal
to
Administrativo de Costa Rica,
to
presidente
the
del capítulo de las Américas
Court of
para
Costa Rica,
la Asociación
president of the
Internacional
chapter
del
of the
Proceso de
Americans,
Refugio, que es tan importante para poder llevar adelante
which is
estos
so important
estándares
to take
que
place and to
recién
take into place the
mencionaba tanto
standards that
Elizabeth
they are
como
just
la
bring.
doctora,
An excellent
publicación que recién se está
example
presentando,
of a
pero también
publication
de
that
los
is just being pointed out
principios
here, and
generales del
also for
Instituto
the
de Asilo
principles
y de algunas
that
de las opiniones
eliminate
consultivas de la
both,
Corte
and also
Interamericana
the
de Derechos Humanos que
consultative
son tan
titles that
relevantes
are very
para la
relevant
protección de
for
los
the
derechos
protection of
como
the
la mencionada opinión consultiva del
rights
21
as
de
the
2014
consultative
que tiene que
opinion
ver
21 of
con el derecho de
2014
los
when it comes
niños
to
en
rights
movilidad.
for kids in
También
mobility.
un placer estar
It
aquí
is a
con la
pleasure to
doctora
be here
Elizabeth
with
Salmón,
Dr.
directora
Elizabeth
del
Salmon,
y
of the IDEPUC, as we knew, Institute of the Grammar Marxist of Catholic University,
otras
which
actividades
have been
que
working
siempre un
in another
placer
activity, and it's
escucharla.
always a pleasure to
Al doctor
hear her.
Ramiro Bustamante,
To Dr.
también
Ramiro,
juez
also
supremo de la Corte
Judge,
Suprema de
Supreme
Justicia de la
Judge from the
República del
Supreme
Perú. Un
Court
placer
from
poder
Peru,
compartir con ustedes este
to
espacio y por
share
supuesto
with
a
you
todos
this
los
space, and also with
participantes
all the
en esta sala
participants
virtual,
this
esta nueva modalidad que hemos tenido que adaptarnos
in this
todos
virtual
y que están sin duda
place, which
interesados
is
en
the
el
new
tema de
modality we have
protección
to
y
adapt,
acceso a
because
derechos de las personas
it is the new normality,
refugiadas,
and
personas
all
reconocidas
the
como refugiadas y
exposed that
también
it's been
personas vulnerables
for
en
refugees and
situación de
people that
vulnerabilidad.
is being spoke about.
En mi caso,
In
quizás
my
también
case,
destacar
I will
de que
also
estamos
point out that
en
we
una
are
semana en donde
in a
venimos
week
conmemorando
that we have been
el
celebrating
pasado 20 de junio, el
what it
Día
was
Mundial del
last
Refugiado,
June 20,
y es un marco
Refugee
que
Day,
siempre nos invita
and
a
also that is a
reflexionar
frame
y a
that
ver
invite
dónde
us
estamos y hacia dónde vamos en temas de
to think
desplazamiento
about where we
forzoso.
are when we are
Y una de sus
going, where it
herramientas que
was
solemos
forced moving. And one of the tools
emitir para el Día
we
del
emit
Refugiado es un
for the
informe
Refugee
sobre
Day is that
tendencias del
it's a
desplazamiento
report for
forzado
tendency
que
of
todos los
what
años
it is.
sacamos para esta fecha y que lo que
Just
busca es
point
poner
out
en
for these
evidencia cuál es la
days every
situación
day,
en que
what points
estamos.
out to
Y
bring
creo
what
que
is the
una
situation
primera
we are right
reflexión es
now.
de
And our
preocupación
first reflection
porque
is
a
it's to be
diciembre del
worried
año pasado
about,
habíamos
because as
alcanzado
December from
a
last
más de
year, we
82
have
millones de
been
personas desplazadas de
having
manera
more than
forzosa.
82 million
Esto
people being
implica más de 2
expelled on a
millones y
forced way.
medio, aún en
It
pandemia,
implies
más de
more
2
than
millones y medio de
2.5
personas
million
han
people
tenido que desplazarse de un
have
año para
to
otro.
move
Y si lo
from one
vemos
year to
aún
another.
con un prisma un
And
poco mayor, en los
and if we
últimos
see
10
that in a
años hemos
bigger glass,
duplicado
in the
la
last
cantidad de
10 years, we
personas
have
que han
doubled
tenido
the
que
amount of
huir
people
para salvar sus
that
vidas,
the
su
way of
capacidad de
living.
resolver.
There are some things that we
También
don't have the
como
capability of
reflexiones,
resolve. As a
el enorme
reflection,
esfuerzo, la gran capacidad de
huge
resiliencia
effort
que tienen
or,
los refugiados y
or the
migrantes
big
de seguir adelante
capacity
a
that the
pesar de los
refugees
obstáculos
have
que
to
encuentran en
go
su
up and keep
camino, ¿no?
moving
Y
forward,
parte de
aside
esto nos decía
from
el alto comisionado de Naciones Unidas
they
para los
find
refugiados,
in the
Filippo Grandi,
countries.
que estuvo para esta
Mr. Grandi
conmemoración aquí
from
en la
this
región, en Colombia, en
in
Ecuador,
Colombia,
en
in the
Panamá,
region,
y
he
que
was here,
nos
so he
indicaba
helped
que hoy
us,
más
and
que
he indicated us
nunca
that
resulta
now,
imperativo
better than ever,
proteger los derechos
it
de
is
todas las
imperative
personas
to protect
sin
the rights from
importar su origen
everybody,
étnico, su
regardless of
nacionalidad,
where
sus
they're coming from,
creencias o cualquiera de sus
ethnicity, or their
características.
beliefs, or any of the
Protección es
or
parte de los
protection.
desafíos que siguen siendo
It is one
presentes
of the challenges
en esta
that are
era de movilidad
present
en la
in
cual
this
vivimos.
era
Lo decía
from
también
mobility. It also
el
was said,
representante especial para el ACNUR
Mr.
y para la
Representative,
OIM, la
or
Organización
the
para las
William,
Migraciones de Naciones Unidas,
the migration
en el
organization from
marco de la
UN,
situación del
in the
desplazamiento
frame
de
of
personas
situations of a
venezolanas, que
movement people
todos la
from
hemos
Venezuela,
vivido,
from
todos la
Venezuela.
conocemos en la región.
We all
Es
know it, we have
actualmente el
lived
segundo
that. It's
desplazamiento
actually
más
the
importante del
second
mundo.
most
Estamos
important
hablando ya de
displacement on the world.
5,6 millones de personas que han
We are
salido
saying
de
about
Venezuela, que han
5.6
tenido que
million
abandonar el
of
país,
persons that have
y 5,6
left
millones son
Venezuela.
los
They have
datos
abandoned the
registrados
country,
por los
and
estados. Los números podrían
5.6
ser
million
bastante
are the
mayores.
registered
Y de
data,
continuar
and
estas
the data could
tendencias,
be a
es
lot
posible
bigger.
que
And if
en
we
no más de
keep
un
on going
año
with this
pase a ser el
tendency,
primer desplazamiento más importante
it's
del
most
mundo.
likely that in
Esto nos
less than a
sitúa
year,
también en la
it's going to
región.
be the
Estamos en una región en
first
donde el desplazamiento es una
displacement
cuestión que vivimos cotidianamente.
movement on the world. This is
Pero
something that
también nos
we are
pone
living here day
en
by day,
evidencia de
but
que estamos en un espacio
gives us evidence that we are
en
in a
donde estamos
space
tratando de
in where we
construir
are
un
trying
espacio
to construct
regional
a space, a regional
humanitario.
space, a
Esta
humanity
mañana
regional
tuve la
space.
posibilidad de
Just this morning, I
participar
was able to
en
participate
bueno,
in
un
a
evento que tenía
in an
como
event that
objeto
had
celebrar los
like
30
an
o el
object
30 aniversario
celebrate 30
de lo que es el
years
Mercosur. El
of
Mercosur y
what it is
Estados
Mercosur.
Asociados, que
Mercosur
prácticamente
and Associated
representan
States,
América
we
del Sur,
practically
y tenía que ver también
represent
sobre
South
protección
America, and also
de
about
personas,
protection of
principalmente
people,
refugiados, inmigrantes en situación vulnerable. Y en ese
especially
marco
migrants
ir
and
viendo cómo de a
refugees
poco,
in vulnerable
a
position.
pesar de
And
que
in
a
that
veces
frame,
nuestras
we were learning
ansiedades,
little
la
by little
mía desde
that
ya, nos
regardless,
lleva a
aside
pensar
from
que no
our
avanzamos lo
anxiety, as
suficiente
this
y se van
mind,
constituyendo y
which I think
se
that
va
we don't
generando
advance a
capas de
lot,
institucionalidad.
little
Recordaba esta
frame by
mañana
frame
que
and layer by
cuando hablamos
layer
del
with
Tratado de
constitution it's
Asunción que
been
da
built. As I
origen
said, as
al
Asuncion
Mercosur,
Treaty
en
that
dicho
give origin to
tratado, el
Mercosur.
tema
In this
del
treaty, the
desplazamiento, de la movilidad,
displacement
era
treatment, the
tratado como un
mobility
factor productivo. Es
was
decir, era
treated as
visto como un
a
factor, digamos, de la
factor that it was
economía, pura y
a result
simplemente.
factor from
Pero
economy.
en el transcurso de estos 30
But
años, el Mercosur
in the
evolucionó
following
y
30
pasó
years,
de plantear
Mercosur
cuestiones
evolved from
arancelarias
putting up
a la
just
dimensión
economy things,
ciudadana, a la
just
dimensión
about more
social del
dimension for
Mercosur. Y en ese
loyalty
marco es que empiezan a
people. And in that point of view, it's where some spaces start to grow. and
reunimos de
the
altas
Forum from
autoridades
Mercosur,
de las comisiones
the
nacionales
High
de refugiados en
Commission
materia
for
de protección,
Refugees in
la reunión de altas
Protection
autoridades de derechos
Matters,
humanos,
the Commission for
distintos
High
espacios
Protection
que
of
buscan
Human Rights, different
diálogo que
spaces that
decía
look
Elizabeth
this
recién, que es tan
dialogue that
importante
Elizabeth was
en
saying
temas de
that it was
protección de
very important to
derechos a
start
personas que así lo
for
requieren.
protection and to
Así
give
que
to protection
en
to
este
people that
marco
require so. So in this frame,
teniendo por lo pronto
and
en nuestro lado
having
presente el Día
in our
Mundial del
side
Refugiado,
present that
creo
the
que es
first state of
pero muy
refugee
relevante
was here,
el
it is
poder
very
trabajar con el
relevant
Poder
to be able
Judicial,
to work with the
donde hemos
uh,
visto y seguimos viendo que hay
judicial power
desafíos y
that we know
brechas
and we
para
see
poder
there are
garantizar el
challenges and
funcionamiento
breaches that we
eficaz
have
de los
to
sistemas de
lower in
protección
order to
y también
be
para el
able
respeto del
to
Estado de
make this
Derecho
something
con las salvaguardas
affordable
que
and
requiere la
also
dignidad de las
to have
personas y los
the
derechos fundamentales
dignity
de todos
really
los seres
reliable because
humanos.
it's a
Estamos en
fundamental right
escenarios
for human rights. We are
complejos
here
y en esos
seeing
escenarios
shows
complejos a
that are
veces hay
very complex, and
inconsistencias
in
en los
those
estándares
complex
que los propios
features
estados
there are
buscan
standards
cuando
that are not the
aplican sus
same,
normas.
and
Y creo que
judges and states put up
dentro de esas
depending on the country they are
inconsistencias o
being
esas
held.
brechas,
So
ahí es
inside those
donde
breaches,
vemos el rol
we
fundamental de
see
la
the
función
role
judicial
of
en la
what it is
protección del
judicial
derecho de las personas refugiadas,
role here in
sea en
protecting the
preservar la tradición del
migrating
asilo
uh,
que la región de América ha
migrating
tenido históricamente y
migrating
sobre todo
rights,
en el siglo
and
pasado
also
con un enorme
last
impacto
year
a nivel
with a
internacional,
huge
el
impact,
reconocimiento de las
international
personas
impact, was
refugiadas migrantes
recognizing
como un
refugee
sujeto de derecho,
as a
es algo
person
que
that had a
también
right.
creemos fundamental.
We
La
something we see
aplicación coherente
something
del
that is
marco
fundamental,
internacional de protección de refugiados
comprehensional,
con el
applicating to
propósito
the
de
same
poder
law with the
avanzar
purpose
en el reconocimiento
on
del derecho a buscar
recognizing
y
the
recibir
right to
asilo,
look
no
and to
solamente
have
en el marco de
asylum,
la Convención del
not only
51,
in the
sino
frame for the
también en lo
51,
que
but
en nuestro caso
also
es la
in our
Declaración
case,
de
what it is, our
Cartagena o la Declaración
Declaration of
Ampliada de
Cartagena,
Refugiados,
or
que es
the
un
broader
mecanismo que
definition
amplía la
that it's a
protección y que ha
mechanism that
surgido
enhances the
de una
protection that it
extraordinaria
brought
práctica en
out from
América
an
Latina,
extraordinary
pero cuesta
practice in
aún que los
Latin
estados
America,
la
but
implementen
it is very
conforme
difficult
requieren
from the
otras
states to be
legislaciones,
implemented
poder
as the
seguir avanzando en la
legislation
creación y desarrollo de
wants
nuevos
it
y más
to.
altos
Being
estándares
able
en
to go
cuestiones de
forward with the
protección. Las
standards on
personas se
protection,
movilizan como nunca antes en la historia y
moving
por eso
like
también
never
desde el
ever in
ámbito de
the
protección y
time.
desde el
So
ámbito
from seeing
judicial
it from
debemos
that
ir adaptando
perspective,
nuestros
we have to
estándares para
adapt
poder
our
proteger
standards to
a aquellos
protect them,
que han perdido la protección
those who have
inicial que tienen
lost
en nuestros
the
lados.
initial
Así que
protection they
sin
have in
duda,
their own
desde nuestra
countries.
perspectiva, los
So
poderes
from our
judiciales son
perspective,
una pieza clave
the
en lo que es garantía de
judicial
derechos
zones,
y que creo que
it
de
is a
alguna manera
special piece
lo mencionaban
important
los ponentes
on the
anteriores,
whole
este
scenario. As I was
cuaderno de
mentioned,
sentencias
this
nos
sentence
permite
book will allow
ver
us
y compartir
see and
algunos de los
share
aspectos que
some
han
of
sido
our
resueltos
aspects
por
that were
distintos
resolved
tribunales en los países de la
by
región. En
different
este caso,
judges in the
fueron
region.
analizados distintas
In this case, we
sentencias
analyzed
de
different
juzgados de 5
sentences
países de
from
América del Sur.
judgments
En
from
general tenemos
5 countries from
similitudes
South America,
en
that
nuestro
in
sistema
general we have
judicial y en nuestro
similarities
sistema también
in a judicial,
administrativo vinculado al
when
tema de
in an
protección
administrative
de
way as well,
refugiados y por lo tanto
as
muchas
well
de
as
estas
coming
sentencias
refugees.
pueden
Most of
iluminar
these
sobre
sentences will
cómo
illuminate
podemos
you
resolver en temas tan
with
importantes
how can
como
we
el derecho a la
resolve so
igualdad, el derecho
important
a la no
themes as
discriminación,
equality,
los procesos
non-discrimination,
migratorios para el
migrating
acceso al
processes
territorio,
for
los
the access for
procedimientos de
territory,
expulsión, temas de acceso a una
expel
nacionalidad,
processes,
cuestiones de
national
apatría,
things,
derechos
themes,
específicos
apatria
vinculados
subjects,
a
specific
personas refugiadas
rights
y
that are
también
bound
derechos
to refugee
sociales que
people,
también
and also
mencionaba
social rights
Elizabeth.
that were
Así
mentioned
que
by Elizabeth. So
creo que
I
de nuestro
think
lado
that on
el
our
poder
side,
participar
being
junto
able
con
to
el sistema judicial,
participate
junto
with
con
the
la
judicial
academia,
power along
en
with the
buscar
academy in
herramientas
looking
que sean también de
tools
utilidad
that will
para
be able to
mantenernos
utilize
en permanente
in
capacitación, porque parte
keep on
también
constant
de los
participation.
tiempos en que
And the
estamos
times that
es
we are right now,
mantenernos capacitados
it
de
is
cómo
very important to
avanza
keep
la sociedad por un
updated
lado y
as
cómo
how
tienen que avanzar
community
los
is
estándares de
advancing
protección de
on the other
derechos
side,
humanos.
and how the
Desde
standards
nuestro
on
rol
human
de
protection have to
ACNUR como
advance as
organismo
well.
encargado de
Our
velar por
role
la
as
protección de las
IGNOR,
personas
our role
que
as
tienen que huir de sus
organism
países,
to
de
be in charge
supervisar que los estados
or
cumplan sus
looking after
obligaciones
people that is migrating,
internacionales. Para nosotros es una
it
prioridad
is
poder
our
contribuir con
it
estas
is our priority
actividades que tienen que ver también
that
con
we look out
mejorar
for the
nuestras
countries to keep up
capacidades
with those rights.
como
And
sociedad
it's
civil,
also,
como academia
as
y
a
como
social
órganos también judiciales
academy and
en
as a
materia
social
de
rights, we have
protección.
to keep on
Simplemente
building those
agradecerles
standards.
nuevamente
I have
a la
to
Comisión de Acceso
thank
a la
you to
Justicia
the
por
Access
Poblaciones
Commission
Vulnerables,
for vulnerable
agradecer
people.
al
I have
IDEBUC
to thank
por
you,
por
the
haber
book
elaborado este documento
to
tan
be able
importante
to elaborate
y
this
ver
document,
cómo
and
hacer
also
para llegar a los
can
efectores de la
we be
justicia,
able
ver cómo
to
poder
reach
pueblo, ver cómo
all
llegar
the
a
sectors of
trabajar también con los
society,
funcionarios
see how can
públicos
we
que tienen
negotiate
el rol
with public
y la
sector, who
competencia de
has the
aplicar estas
role
normas. Creo que
and who
entre
are the
todos
ones who have to
tenemos
apply
que
these
seguir
norms.
sumando
I
para poder
think we
tener
have
un
to
mundo
keep
cada
on
vez más
adding among all
incluyente e
so we can
igualitario
have a
y que
bigger
respete los
and a
derechos de
more
todos.
community
Muchísimas
world that
gracias por
respects the
invitarnos
rights
a
of
participar de este
everybody.
evento.
Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this.
Agradecemos la intervención
Thank
del
you so much
doctor
for the
Federico Gusti,
intervening of Dr. Federico
representante del
Augusti,
Alto Comisionado de
representative
las
of the
Naciones
High
Unidas
Commission
para
for
los
the UN
Refugiados,
for
ACNUR.
the Refugees ACNUR.
Hemos llegado a la estación de preguntas de esta conferencia virtual, el acceso a la justicia y derechos de las
We have come to
personas
the
refugiadas y
Q&A
migrantes. Doctora Yenetello,
of
hemos
this.
recibido
This
algunas
is Dr.
preguntas de los
Yanetello. We have
participantes que nos
received
acompañan
some
a
questions
través de
for
las
the
salas Meet
participants
y
here
redes sociales.
through the charts
La
and
primera
the
pregunta
social
es la
media. So
siguiente.
the first question is next.
¿Qué documentos aprobó el
What
Poder
document
Judicial con
were
otros
approved by the
tribunales de
judicial
justicia de los
power
países de la región para la
with another
protección de las
courts from
personas
the
migrantes
countries
o
for
víctimas
the
de trata de
protections of
personas?
migrating people?
Gracias por la pregunta. Como
Thank you
se
for the
acaba
question.
de señalar
As
y
he was pointing out,
habíamos dejado para
we
el
left
comentario de nuestros
for
expositores,
the comment on
tanto la
the
doctora Elizabeth
other
Salmón y
panelists,
la doctora Agusti,
as
es
Augusti and
que se ha
Elizabeth, is
trabajado
that
este
it has been
documento,
worked,
que es
this
el cuaderno
document,
de sentencias emblemáticas,
that is the
en
book of
donde se puede
emblematic
encontrar
sentences,
los
so where you can find
pronunciamientos expedidos
documents
por las
that were
cortes de
expelled
nuestra
by the
región, cortes de
judges
justicia de nuestra región, en donde figuran
for where
precisamente los
they can be pointed out or it figures out
establecidos en
the
estas
criteria that were
decisiones
established
judiciales
in
que
these
recogen a su
decisions
turno los
that
estándares
gather
internacionales de protección de
the
los
same
derechos
way the
humanos de
international
personas migrantes.
standards for migrating
Junto
people.
con
Along with
este
this,
es un trabajo
work
conjunto, pero ya lo
in
ha detallado
conjunction,
la
but it
doctora
was detailed
Salmón, cómo ha
by Ms.
sido la
Salmon,
metodología,
how it
y
was the
hemos tenido
method
sí
and
esfuerzos para
how
poder
we bond the
marcar
efforts
y sacar como un
and,
instrumento de trabajo
use this
de
as a work
consulta
instrument,
obligatoria, diría yo, de consulta
obligatory
obligatoria. Y
consulting.
ahí están sentencias
So there are in there
también el
you can
Poder
find
Judicial
sentences that the judicial power
expedido, y uno de ellos
was put
precisamente
out,
es una
and one
sentencia
of
del
those
doctor Ramiro
was the
Bustamante,
sentence for Mr. Ramiro
que
Bustamante.
con mucho honor
Like
lo
with a
invitamos
lot
para
of
que
honor,
participe
I
también
invite him here
de
to
este
participate
evento.
on
En
this
ese
event.
sentido,
In that
es uno
matter,
de los documentos,
it's
yo
one of the
creo, más
documents that I think
importantes
it's
que
the most
tenemos en este
important that we
momento
have at this
y
point,
que contamos con él, y
that
que
we
por
have right now, that we
supuesto
can look
seguirá
at,
alimentándose con
that could
los
keep on
decretos
feeding with more
posteriores
pronouncement
que a
that will come
consecuencia de
afterwards, that
estas
the
decisiones
consequence to these
están
will be happening.
que están marcando un derrotero, están marcando un camino que todos y todas
And they are marking the
debemos seguir,
guideline
¿no?
that
Después
we all have to
hay
follow.
otros
Also, there are
documentos
some
que
documents
tenemos
that
también,
we have
lo puse en la diapositiva, lo
that
pasé
I
un
put those
poquito
on the
rápido,
slide, so
pero
I put them pretty quick. But there are
publicaciones que como comisión
some publishing
realizamos.
documents that, as a commission, we made.
Acceso a la justicia de
We have the
personas
access to the
migrantes,
justice for migrating
tenemos rutas de
people. We
violencia
have
sexual,
routes from
para
those
su
exponents
publicación,
work those
y
day by day for their
finalmente
publications.
también contamos con
We have
grabaciones grabadas. Entonces,
recording
la
exponents.
pregunta,
So
tenemos un
whoever
banco
made that
de
question, we
acceso
have a
para quienes
access
necesiten
bank
alguna
that
información
they can go into that file if they need an
podamos brindar. Muchas
information
gracias.
that we can give you.
Gracias por su respuesta, doctora Yanetello. Tenemos una última pregunta que nos ha llegado a través del chat de la sala Meet. Es la siguiente.
The next question
Una
is as
persona que
follows.
ingresó al
If
país de forma
people that
irregular
came
en estos
into the
últimos
country
meses,
on a
teniendo en cuenta que
non-regular
las fronteras
form
están
in the
cerradas por la
last
pandemia, puede
few months,
solicitar
having into
refugio?
consideration that the borders were closed due to the
Es más,
pandemic, they can
en
ask for
las
refugee?
diapositivas que también se las
Yes,
dejamos,
actually,
ahí
in the
figura
slides,
cómo
there
la
was
ruta que
a
se tiene que
case
seguir
that the
a través
route
de
that
las
you
plataformas
have to
virtuales
follow
que el propio
is the
Ministerio de
virtual
Relaciones Exteriores,
platforms
quien es
that the
la entidad
ministry from the
encargada
foreign minister
de
put
tramitar
out, which is the
y
entity
finalmente otorgar
who has the
el
right,
estatus de
or who is the
refugiado,
entity that has to give out the status
a
of
través de una
refugee.
plataforma virtual
Through that
permite que se
platform,
presenten las solicitudes al
that
respecto.
virtual platform, it allows
Entonces,
you to present
si de repente
the request
necesitan,
for that
lo
situation.
volvemos a
So
poner, o
if
internamente, por
they need
favor,
it, we can put that
Cristian,
as well. But
podemos
internally,
proporcionarle
Christian, can you
todos
give that
los datos.
information to him?
Sí, por supuesto, doctora. Hemos colocado en
Yes,
las
of
salas
course,
Meet y
we'll
también en
do
la
so.
transmisión de redes sociales
We
para,
have put those in the
para los que
Meet
nos siguen a través de
uh,
Facebook, el enlace donde podrán descargar este y otros
rooms.
documentos
In the link,
implementados
they
por la
can
Comisión
download
de
this and
Acceso
all
a
the
la
documents
Justicia.
that were put out here by the
Agradecemos las
Access
respuestas
Commission.
brindadas por la
We thank
doctora
you so
Janet
much
Tello,
for
pues
Dr.
suprema y
Atello
presidenta de la Comisión Permanente de
for
Acceso a la
questions and
Justicia.
answers.
Y en este momento vamos a
And also
pasar
right now,
a las
I'm going to
conclusiones y
go
las
through
palabras finales de
conclusions
esta
and
conferencia
last
virtual,
words
el acceso
for
a la
this
justicia y
conference.
derechos de las
The access
personas
to
refugiadas
justice
y
and
migrantes,
from people
a cargo
migrating
del
and migrating
doctor
people.
Ramiro Bustamante Segarra, juez
It's on
supremo de la
charge of
Corte
Mr. Ramiro
Suprema de
Bustamante, Supreme
Justicia de la
Judge,
República de
Judge
Perú.
of
El
Supreme
doctor
Court of
Ramiro
Peru.
Bustamante es doctor en
Dr.
Derecho y
Ramiro
magíster en
Bustamante,
Derecho
it's the
Constitucional y Tutela
Magister in
Jurisdiccional,
Law and
especialista
Constitutional
en argumentación
Jurisdiction
jurídica por la
Laws,
Universidad de Alicante de España y la Pontificia
Argumentation
Universidad Católica del
from
Perú.
the
Juez supremo de la Sala de Derecho Constitucional
Supreme
Permanente de la
Court
Corte
Judge, from the
Suprema
Supreme
de
Court, from the
Justicia de la
Permanent Court,
República y
and the Supreme
docente
Court from the
universitario
Republic of
de la Academia de la
Peru. And
Magistratura.
yeah.
Doctor Ramiro Bustamante, adelante, por favor.
Dr. Ramiro Bustamante, keep
Buenas
on going on.
tardes con todas y con todos.
Good afternoon,
Doctora
everybody.
Janet Tello Villardi, jueza suprema titular
Doctora
de la
Janet
Corte
Tello,
Suprema de Justicia de la
Supreme
República
Court Judge from the
y
Supreme Court of the
presidenta de la
Republic,
Comisión
and President from the
Permanente de
Commission
Acceso a la Justicia de
for
Personas
Permanent
en
Access for
Condición de
Judge for person
Vulnerabilidad
in
y Justicia en
vulnerability
mi
condition
comunidad.
and justice in our
Doctor
community.
Esteban
Dr. Esteban
Lemus
Lemus,
Laporte, juez del Tribunal
Laporte,
Administrativo de Costa Rica
Judge
y
from Costa
presidente del
Rica, and President
capítulo
from the
de las
chapter
Américas de la
from the
Asociación
Americas of
Internacional
the
de Jueces
Association
por
International of
Refugio
Judges
y
for
Migración,
Refugees and Migration,
dignos colegas que nos
and the
acompañan,
colleagues
señoras y
that are here
señores.
with us.
En principio, quisiera
In the
felicitar a
first
la doctora
principle, I
Tello y
want
al doctor
to
Lamus por la
congratulate
organización
Mr.
de esta
Lamus and Dr.
importante
Atello for the
conferencia
organization
que
of
aborda
this
un tema
important conference,
trascendente como es el
who brings in
acceso
a
a la
very important
justicia
theme,
y
which is
derechos de las
access to
personas
justice and
migrantes y
rights for people who are
refugiadas.
migrating and refugees.
El acceso a la justicia
The
es un
access of
derecho
justice,
fundamental
it's
en
a
un Estado de Derecho
fundamental
que garantiza
right
a
on the
cualquier
fundamental right
persona,
country,
sea
which
nacional
gives
o
the,
extranjera,
to anybody,
poder ejercer
regardless
sus
if it's
derechos
national or
en
international
condiciones
person,
igualitarias
to even
ante
ask
las
for
autoridades
the rights
administrativas o
they have into
judiciales,
international
sin
and
ningún
nationally,
tipo de
without
discriminación
kind of
por
discrimination
raza, sexo,
because
idioma,
of race,
nacionalidad,
sex,
etc.
language, or nationality,
En
etc.
efecto, como muy bien lo dijo la
In
doctora
effect,
Tello,
as Doctor
el
said,
Tribunal Constitucional del Perú, en
the
el expediente de amparo
tribunal from Peru and the
2744-2015,
beheld
estableció
filed from
que cualquier medida
2015
que se
established
adopte
that any
por
measure
el
that is
Estado
adopted
en
by the
contra de las
state
personas migrantes
migrating
debe
people
respetar sus derechos
must
humanos
respect their human
en
rights
cumplimiento
in
de su
complying
obligación
with
de
the
garantizar
obligation of
su
guaranteeing
ejercicio y
the
goce
exercise
a toda
and
persona que se encuentre
to
bajo
every
su
people that
jurisdicción,
it's within their
sin
jurisdiction
discriminación
without
alguna por su
discrimination,
regular o irregular
regular or
estancia,
irregular state,
nacionalidad, raza,
nationality,
género
race,
o
gender,
cualquier otra
or
causa,
any other cause,
y la legitimidad
and the
de
legitimacy
las restricciones
of the
que pudiera
restrictions
establecer el Estado
that could be
deben
established by
estar
the state
sujetas a
must
que
be
se
subject
demuestre su
that it could be
razonabilidad
demonstrate
y
the
proporcionalidad.
rationality and
Pero
proportionality.
además de este pronunciamiento
But
del Tribunal
also this
Constitucional,
pronouncement,
debemos
the
tener
tribunal
presente que el Estado tiene
present that the
obligaciones
state has
positivas y
the
obligaciones
obligations,
negativas.
positive and negative
En cuanto a las
obligations.
primeras, las
Because the first
negativas,
ones, the
debe
negatives,
abstenerse
they have to
de realizar
abstain to
acciones que dificulten o
that difficult
imposibiliten
or
el acceso a la justicia.
impossible the access to
En
justice.
cuanto a las segundas,
Among the
las
second,
positivas,
the positive
el
ones,
Estado
the
se
state,
encuentra obligado
it is
a
obligated
adoptar las
to
acciones
adopt the
pertinentes
actions pertinent
que
to
garanticen
guarantee
el efectivo
the
acceso a la justicia
effective access to
de todos por
justice
igual,
for everybody in the
nacionales o
same condition,
extranjeros, para
national
lo
or
cual
foreign.
se
That is
requiere de
why it is
políticas
required
públicas
political
antidiscriminatorias. Al
and
respecto,
non-discrimination
también la doctora
rules.
Tello destacó
In
las
that
reglas de
regards,
Brasilia,
Dr. Tello
donde
put out
considera
the
personas
Brazilian
en
rules,
situación de
where it
vulnerabilidad
considers people in
aquellas que por
vulnerability, people
razón de edad,
the ones
género,
because
estado
of a
físico,
gender,
intelectual o
age, or
por
physical
circunstancias
situation, or
sociales,
mentally
económicas,
situation, or
étnicas o
for social
culturales,
or ethnical
encuentren especiales
situation,
dificultades
they
para
find out special
ejercitar con
difficulties to
plenitud
find out
ante el sistema de
completely
justicia
against the
los
system
derechos
the
reconocidos por el
rights they
ordenamiento
know
jurídico.
or the rights that are be
Entre
given by
ellas,
the judicial
evidentemente,
order. And
se
among
encuentran los
them
migrantes y
are the migrant
refugiados.
and refugees.
Asimismo, quisiera
Also,
destacar
I would like
la
to
brillante
point out
exposición de la
the
doctora Tello
ex
Gilardi que siempre es un placer escucharla y comprobar su pasión que tiene por la protección de las personas vulnerables y la gran labor que viene realizando en el Perú desde la comisión que preside. Y nos ha ilustrado sobre el tema tratado y demostrado que el acceso a la justicia y los derechos de las personas refugiadas y migrantes es un problema latente, no solo en nuestro país, no solo en nuestra región, sino también en el mundo entero. La doctora Tello nos ha dado una cifra escalofriante: más de 272 millones de personas migrantes en el mundo, y que se va incrementando hora a hora por diversas razones: crisis políticas, económicas, sociales, pandemias, y me llamó mucho la atención hasta crisis ambientales. Y en efecto, por el cambio climático, por ejemplo, una zona poblada que se dedicaba a la agricultura y que por razones del calentamiento global se convierte en una zona desértica por falta de agua, obviamente toda esta población tendrá que trasladarse forzosamente a otro lugar para poder subsistir. Asimismo, se ha
Also, they have to
conceptualizado
attend, or it has
lo
been
que es un
concept of what
refugiado,
it is a refugee.
una persona que abandona su
People
país por
that leaves their
fundados
country
temores
because
de
funded
persecución
fear
por
of a
razones
persecuting or for
políticas,
political
de
reasons,
sexo, raza,
of
religión,
sex,
etc., y que pueden ser
and
sancionados en sus
also can
países
sanction on
de
their
origen.
countries.
Pero este
But
concepto no es
this
solo
concept, it
individual,
is not
sino que
only
también puede
individual,
ser
it is a broad
grupal, ¿no?
group of
Cuando
perception.
perjudique a todo un
When it
grupo
prejudices
colectivo
when
que
it
requiere
prejudices a big
protección en el
collective that
país de
require
acogida,
protection for
sin
where
importar su
from the
situación
country they're coming,
migratoria como
without
regular
pointing
o
out the
irregular,
situation or
legal
consider the
o
situation as
ilegal.
regular or
Se han
irregular or legal
desarrollado
or illegal.
muy didácticamente
We have
los
developed
postulados de igualdad
the
y no
postings of
discriminación,
equality and
vulnerabilidad,
non-discrimination,
principio
which
de
is
propia
vulnerable,
persona, principio
pro-person
de no
principle,
devolución,
the not-returning
unidad
principle,
familiar, con la presentación
familiar
de casos
unity with the
reales y
presentations of real
resoluciones
cases and
jurisdiccionales
resolutions
que
that
han
were made by
abordado
the
esta
judges that
problemática.
have brought out those
Asimismo,
problems.
quisiera
Also,
felicitar
I would like to
los comentarios de la
congratulate the
doctora
comments from
Elizabeth
Dr.
Salmón Gárate,
Elizabeth
directora
Salmon
ejecutiva
Garate,
del
the
Instituto
executive director from
Democracia
the
de la
Democracy
Pontificia Universidad
Institute
Católica
from the
del Perú y de PUC,
from the
y del
Pontifical
doctor
from
Federico
Peru, and
Agusti,
from Mr. Federico
representante
Augusti,
del Alto
representative
Comisionado de
from
las
the High
Naciones
Commission of
Unidas
the
para los
UN.
Refugiados, ACNUR,
And
que han resaltado la
they have highlighted
trascendencia
the
e
transcendence
importancia
and the
del
importance
cuaderno de
of the
sentencias
book of sentence,
emblemáticas,
emblematic book of sentences,
porque todos los
because
jueces y
all the
autoridades
judges and
administrativas
authorities
involucradas en
that were
procesos
involved in
por
that,
migrantes
or
y
the processes
refugiados,
for
tenemos que estar
migration, we have to
debidamente
have
capacitados y
very
sensibilizados con este
capacitated
problema de
and
acceso a la
sensibilized with
justicia
this
y
problem, which is
derechos de las
access to the
personas
justice
migrantes
for people
y
migrating.
refugiados. Pero también es
But
cierto que
also,
tenemos que
it is
aunar
true that
esfuerzos
we
y
have to
encontrar
put our
estándares
effort together and find
internacionales que hagan
international
realidad
standards that
este
make
derecho de acceso a la
reality this
justicia
access
a
to
todos los migrantes y
justice to all the
refugiados.
people migrating and
Basta con abrir
refugees.
el
It is
cuaderno de
just enough to
sentencias
look at the book,
emblemáticas
to
para la
open it,
protección y garantía de los
and to
derechos de
look
las
at it
personas refugiadas y migrantes en América del Sur,
in migrating people in South
editado por el
America,
Poder Judicial del
edited for
Perú
the
y
judicial from
IDEPUC,
Peru and Idepuk,
y ver el trabajo que
and
han
see the work they
realizado
have done there.
Emily Batton,
Emily Vato,
Cecilia Blooming
Cecilia
y Andrea
Blooming,
Carrasco,
and Andrea
a través
Carrasco,
de
through these
sentencias expedidas en
sentences
los distintos
expelled
países de
by
Sudamérica,
from different
como
countries of South America
Argentina,
like
Ecuador,
Argentina,
Chile,
Ecuador, Chile,
Colombia y
Colombia,
Perú,
and Peru,
abordando temas
boarding
sobre el derecho a la
subjects like
igualdad y
the
no
equal rights,
discriminación, el derecho a la
non-discrimination,
familia,
rights to
el derecho al
family,
debido
the right
proceso,
to
el
the
derecho a la
accurate
libertad
process,
personal,
the
el
right
derecho a
for
la
liberty,
nacionalidad,
personal
la
liberty, the right for
prohibición de
nationality,
expulsiones y
prohibit
derechos de las personas
deporting,
refugiadas, entre
and
otros.
privileges to refugee, among others.
Asimismo, felicitar
Also, to
las
congratulate
intervenciones de los
the intervening of
participantes
the
con sus
participants
preguntas
with their
que han
questions
enriquecido el debate
that have
el día de
enriched
hoy.
the debate today.
El tema
The
obviamente da
subject
para mucho más,
obviously gives out for
pero
more,
creo que es
but I think
importante
it is
que
important
debemos ser
that we
empáticos,
have
es
to have
decir,
empathy. We
ponernos en los
have to
zapatos de
put the
los
shoes,
refugiados y
we have to
migrantes
put ourselves
para
in the shoes of
poder
the rest of the
entender su
people,
difícil
so we can
situación
understand
que
the
les toca
difficult
vivir,
situation, the
no
difficult
por
situation that it
razones
takes for them,
propias,
not because of their situation, but because of the situation that are aside from their personal situation, and look from the right now, maybe it could be privately, could be public, point out of view, but we have to see the rights that the migrants have. Being respectful for the time that it has been given to me, I would like to end up with the message that it was given ex-President Barack Obama. And I think that it's not the same, but I think I wish they will be replicating, so at the end we have all the judges the opportunity to in these themes so sensitive that are in so much actuality in our region. Thank you so much.
Y con las palabras del doctor Ramiro Bustamante
With the words of
Segarra,
Mr. Yamiro
juez
Augusto
supremo de la Corte
Segarra,
Suprema de
Supreme
Justicia
Court
de la
of St.
República del
George,
Perú,
with the Republic
hemos
of Peru,
llegado al final de la
we have come
conferencia
to the
virtual,
following, to
el
the
acceso
virtual
a la
conference, the
justicia y
access to
derechos de
justice
las
and
personas
rights to the
refugiadas y
migrating people,
migrantes, organizada por la Comisión
organized by the
Permanente de Acceso a
Commission
la
of
Justicia
Access
de
to Peru
Personas en Condición
for
de
Migration People
Vulnerabilidad
in
y
Peru,
Justicia en tu
for
Comunidad
Vulnerability and
del
Justice
Poder
in your
Judicial del
community,
Perú,
the Judicial
por
Power
el
of Peru,
capítulo de las
by
Américas
the
de la
chapter of the
Asociación
Americas of the
Internacional de
Association
Jueces en
International of
Refugio e
Judges,
Migración,
in
la Oficina
Migration
del
Judges,
Alto
the
Comisionado de las
Office of the
Naciones
High
Unidas
Commission of the
para los
UN
Refugiados y
for
el
the
Instituto de
Refugees and the
Democracia y
Institute
Derechos
for
Humanos
Democracy
de la
and
Pontificia
Human Rights
Universidad
from the
Católica del Perú.
from
Agradecemos la participación de las
University of
distinguidas
Peru. I
autoridades que
also
nos han
would like to
acompañado en esta sala de
congratulate
honor,
and thank
señora doctora
the
Yonetello Gilardi,
people who has
señor
come here
doctor
to
Ramiro
Tello
Bustamante
Girardi,
Segarra,
Mr. Ramiro
señor doctor
Bustamante,
Esteban Lemos Laporte,
Dr. Esteban Lemos
señor doctor
Laporte,
Federico Agusti
Dr. Federico Augusto,
y la doctora Elizabeth
and
Salmón
also Elizabeth
de la
Salmon
Pontificia
Garate
Universidad Católica del
from
Perú
the
del
Pope's
Instituto de Democracia y
Catholic
Derechos Humanos.
University from Peru,
Disculpe,
from
doctora.
Human Rights.
Saludamos también la
Also, I
presencia
would
en
like
esta
to
sala
welcome
de la
and
doctora
thanks
Elvira
the
Álvarez
presidency,
Sarazábal, doctora
Mr.
María Hermosa
Vidal
González Salazar,
Salazar,
integrantes de la Comisión Permanente de
Committee
Acceso a
of
la
the Permanent
Justicia de la
Commission of the Access
Conferencia.
to Justice.
Recordamos a nuestros
I
participantes
remind
que
you that our
encontrarán esta y otras
participants that you can
conferencias
find
en el
this and other
Facebook y el canal
conference
de
in
YouTube de la
Facebook and
Comisión
YouTube
Permanente
from
de
the Commission.
Acceso a la Justicia. Muy buenas tardes a todas y todos
Thank you
y
so much. Good
finalizamos la
afternoon, and
emisión
we
en la
make
sala.
this transmission. Bye.